Hello and welcome. I'm Dr. Katherine Horton. Before I start, let me just do my usual sound check. I would like to make sure that this broadcast is okay, and I don't have the live chat on, so I don't have a way to check. Just a moment. I would like to make sure that. Okay, it sounds like you can hear me all right. Okay, so what today is about is I would like to use my right to the reply to the allegations and accusations made by my former colleagues, Ramola Dharmaraj and Melanie Vritschan. And these accusations were made in December, but because of the attacks and because of the amount of work I had back in December, I had to basically file a cease and desist. I had to send a cease and desist to Ramola because the accusations kept coming at a ludicrously high rate since August. And frankly, after half a year, it was, beginning to just become too much in terms of the workload to handle. So I had to file a cease and desist and basically just use the Christmas period to finish my work. I was attacked brutally. I had to recover physically, and I had a lot of administration to work through. And it's only now that I actually have the time to respond to this. Now, what I would like to clarify is the videos I'm referring to. So let me just share my screen and show you the videos I mean. So I am referring to now to report number 99 called Melanie and Ramola D on Katherine Horton's defamation campaign, so-called alleged defamation campaign. And this was published on the 2nd of December, 2018. I also would like, at this stage, I would like you to note the good cheer of these women, right? As they're launching into this video, which is 2.5 hours dedicated to leveling allegations and accusations against me. I mean, this is breathtaking. Now, as I said, this was on the 2nd of December. As soon as I saw this, I began uploading evidence and I began collecting the evidence to clear my name, and I started uploading it onto the website. But I didn't even have the chance to address these allegations because as I was uploading evidence with all the other things that I was doing at the time, they brought out a second video on the 15th of December. Okay, so look at the dates, right? It's less than 2 weeks, or roughly 2 weeks, 2nd December 2018. 2 weeks later, there was another 1.5 hour video. And this time it was report 103 called Melanie and Ramola D on Katherine Horton's intensified and expanded defamation campaign. Now you can see the lie straight in the name, because between the 2nd of December and the 15th of December, I hadn't even replied to the allegations in public. All I did is I began collecting all the evidence and uploading it. So I didn't even get a chance. It cannot be expanded or intensified when I'm doing something defensive, which is uploading the evidence to actually clear my name for all the previous allegations that were made in a 2.5 hour long video. So I would like you to note that what I had to do now is there were 2.5 hours here, plus 1.5 hours makes 4 hours. So I had to wait through 4 hours of video material specifically, publicly dedicated to leveling allegations against me. Okay, and because there are 2 people, and because I had to reply to all the allegations made by Ramola and by Melanie, what you actually have in real terms, the amount of work effort that went into 2 people leveling allegation against me over 4 hours, this is actually 8 man-hours of work. Okay, 8 man-hours. It actually works out to be much more onerous work-wise to reply to allegations made by 2 people over 4 hours than it would be by just 1 person over 4 hours, because I have to go through, for example, 2 people's emails, 2 people's Skype streams, 2 people's, stuff, and 2 people's personal history to then go through and actually upload the evidence. So I had to invest at least 8 woman hours in listening to this and going through and then checking the facts. Now, on top of checking the facts for each person comes the downloading of the evidence, the reducting of sensitive information, the preparation of the evidence to then upload the evidence to clear my name or to present it in a video. So these two women single-handedly caused 1 working week of effort for me to clear my name. And this is extremely serious. And at this point, I want the victim community and the general public to understand the real costs of this. The other thing I would like to point out that neither here nor on this video, here in this 2.5 video, do these women ever present any evidence. All you hear is them talking, and the only time they share their screen is to point to my webpage where I have uploaded evidence. So this is the type of standard I'm dealing with here. Okay? It is super easy for 2 women to sit down and have a frankly bitch fest over 4 hours, but then for me to clear my name and prepare and upload the evidence to prove that what they are doing here is utterly false and in many cases malicious lies, that is a lot of work that they have caused. And I do have a right to reply, and it is absolutely unacceptable to expect from me that 2 people will level allegations, will have a hell of a time, will earn Google advertising money from their work, and then I just sit there and let my name be sullied. I'm sorry. I will not stand for that, especially not when these women have produced exactly 0 evidence. So I want everybody to really understand how serious it is, what has happened here. I understand that for the victim community, it's a lot of fun to just watch other victims go at each other, but this is no laughing matter. What has been done here has caused serious harm to my health and to my time. And my time translates directly to my health because I am being gunned non-stop. And frankly, it takes a lot of effort to just sit here outside of my bunker to present an actual, qualified image, one that I might have to quote in court. So I really want people to understand that what has happened here was just serious in the extreme. Okay? And this is the final time I'm going to go through this. I have already spent another 2 hours responding to the allegations by video. This was in my video Do's and Don'ts, and I have outlined my position. And I'm sad to say that these women have made references to that video, but they have not watched it. And they have not quoted evidence from it. So the standard I'm dealing with here is absolute kindergarten. And now I want to proceed and I want to show the actual real evidence. I want to show documents, actually show you documents. And I want to show conversations in detail about what has happened. And what I'm going to do is, because it is my right to reply on the very same platform that the allegations have been made, I will now take as long as I need to address every single one of these allegations in detail and lay them to rest. So what I will do is I will split these videos into separate videos, and I will just take my time. And if I have to interrupt my my video because I have to go away and upload evidence, I will just take my time and do exactly that. Because I'm under a lot of work pressure, I'm a lot of pressure to prepare my court case, and I'm an extreme amount of pressure from this war that involves 24/7 gunning off my head and my body, on top of the chip torture that I'm suffering as well. So I will just take my time. And now I would like to start. And also I would like to answer sentence by sentence, because these women have been laying it on really thick. And I will show you just how thick. So I had to find a platform to make a transcript, and this is the transcript. And this is just the first 20 minutes. It already stretches to 12 pages. Okay. And when you look at it, I have got something to say, that's the orange, in response to pretty much every paragraph that they're saying. So I have to go through it in detail. And I made a transcript because, frankly, what has been leveled at me is already enough for a court case. And I reserve the right to, when the targeting has been shut down, when I have the time to go back and actually claim damages for what they have done to my reputation in a malicious way, without ever presenting any evidence. And after I've made these videos and after I've gone through these 4 hours I will reserve the right to just ignore everything that comes from these women henceforth. I want them out of my life, and it is my good right not to have anything to do with them after what they have done. So I'm going to go through it in detail. And what I also would like to start with is I would like to share my screen and explain the difficulty, because I would like to reply sentence by sentence, because the actual original video was directly addressed against me and only contained allegations against me. It didn't contain any intellectual property, unless, of course, these women want to, you know, classify their creative prose and the creative writing, right, that Ramola engages in as an actual intellectual property. But as far as I'm concerned, these are facts and allegations leveled at me, and I have a right to reply directly, and I do not have the actual time to type it up and then read it out. I will just play the content. Now, with that, I also am going to, of course, add, but I want to go through, I want to start with the fair use of YouTube. Okay, what is fair use? Because I want to make full use of this fair use right now in quoting their videos. So first of all, the fair use guidelines. Okay, so different countries have different rules about when it's acceptable to use material without the copyright owner's permission. For example, in the United States, works of commentary, criticism, research, teaching, or news reporting might be considered fair use. Some other countries have a similar idea called fair dealing that may work differently. Courts analyze potential fair uses according to the facts of each specific case. You'll probably want to get legal advice from an expert before uploading videos that contain copyright-protected material. Well, I'm not uploading, I'm quoting to clear my own name, okay? So let's go through the four factors, and everybody who's not involved in this back and forth between me and my former colleagues, maybe just listen and maybe just try to learn something for your own case, maybe for future reference, okay? But this is now how I want to go through it, and this is, to the best of my knowledge, the right thing to do. So, the four factors of fair use. In the United States, and also I should say that right now, I have to reply to allegations made over YouTube by a woman in the US and a woman in Belgium, and I'm in Switzerland. So Switzerland is not even European Union. It kind of is, but not always. She's in the European Union, in a different country. She's on a different continent on the United States. So this is a legal nightmare. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say that this is like news reporting because it has been made on a platform. It has been called my defamation campaign, which is frankly an allegation that's in itself a lie. Okay, and lots of allegations have been made against me, about me exclusively. So I'll take the right to quote those passages about me on my channel, and I'll use my channel as the equivalent of the platform that Ramola has on your channel to reply to these allegations. And that's why I am using fair use. Okay, now, first of all, in the United States, fair use is determined by a judge who analyzes how each of the four factors of fair use apply to a specific case. So these are the four factors taken into consideration. First, the purpose and the character of the use, including whether such use is of commercial nature or is for non-profit educational purposes. Now, I would like to say that this video and all my right to reply videos are not monetized, even though I have the right to monetize because it contains my own work that I had to do to undo what these women have done. But I shall not monetize these particular videos. So it is not for commercial use. It is for the specific purpose of clearing my name. And also, I would like to make it educational so that other victims can see how they may be, how they might go about debunking false allegations brought against them, because it is just a case, it is just a case with targeting, that defamation is part of it. So I don't want this to be just about me. I also want all my viewers to actually take something away from it, okay? So fair use, these are the 4 points. So the character is non-commercial and it is educational and it's for the purposes of the legal right to reply. So courts typically focus on whether the use is transformative, that is, whether it adds new expression or meaning to the original, or whether it merely copies from the original. Now, in my case, I'm going to play what they are saying, and I'm going to add information to it. I'm going to add new content and new evidence that these women didn't quote. And that new evidence is where the emphasis is, because that is what's needed to clear my name. So it says commercial uses are less likely to be considered fair, though it is possible to monetize a video and still take advantage of the fair use defense. Now, I might monetize it because it contains my own work, but to keep it absolutely strictly clear, I shall not monetize these videos about my right to reply. Okay, second, the nature of the copyrighted work. Using material from primarily factual works is more likely to be fair than using purely fictional works. Well, this is funny, because on the one hand, Ramola and Melanie's reporting might be considered factual, but frankly, it contains a lot of fiction and a lot of stuff that's frankly made up. So it's up to them to claim if they want to put it in the realms of fiction, in which case I don't even need to use my right to reply because all this is just fictitious, but then they would have to declare it as such. But as they, go about it, they seem to present it as an actual factual debate. So I shall use this material as a factual work, okay? So third, the amount and substantiality of the portion used in relation to the copyrighted work as a whole. So the amount. Borrowing small bits of material from an original work is more likely to be considered fair use than borrowing large portions. However, even a small taking may weigh against fair use in some situations if it constitutes the heart of the work. Now, their entirety, the heart of their work was in this case character defamation and allegations against me. And in this particular case, I shall use the right to quote their entire work, the entire 4 hours, these 2.5 hours plus these 1.5 hours. Because I'm a victim of extreme targeting, I'm a Holocaust victim, and I do not have the time and I do not have the monetary reserves to make transcripts and be working with transcripts. I will just play the original. And I also want to point to face expressions, and I will want to add content that they have not had, which is the analysis of their facial expressions as they're making these allegations and things like that. So this is why I might quote the entire time, but here the emphasis is on the evidence I provide, the analysis I provide on their words and all that. And this is something I'm adding to their work. So fourth, the effect of the use upon the potential market for or value of the copyrighted work. Now, I hope that these women are not aiming to have a market. They're not making a market with their allegations against me. I really hope that they do not want to make money, create a market, or monetize the allegations, the false allegations they are making against me at the expense of my reputation. So for this reason, I really consider this not to be a commercial work, and I really hope that these women never hope to make money out of these allegations against me. And for this reason, I consider the fourth point not to be relevant in this case. So I just want to prove that I have given the fair use sufficient consideration, and I'm of the strong belief that I'm doing right. And in fact, what I'm doing now, playing the audio and quoting it verbatim, is actually necessary for me to quote my work, to clear my name. It is necessary for me to quote what they said and show the facial expressions to clear my name and to prove that these are malicious allegations made by malicious people who in some cases are lying. So with this, I would like to start, and I would like to do it such that I just go back to the beginning, and I will take the first video and go through the first 2.5 hours, and then I take the next video, and I'm going to play it and I'm going to just listen, and I'm going to pause it. Meanwhile, I'm reading the transcript and I'm reading my points, right? And I'm going to pause it where I think that I have got something to prove, some evidence to share. So let's start.
Hello, everyone. Good evening and welcome to this evening edition of Ramola D Reports. I'm here this evening with Melanie, and we're here to speak about a very particular and very specific subject, and that is Dr. Katherine Horton's defamation campaign that she has apparently launched against myself and against Melanie. So, hello, Melanie. Good evening. Thanks for joining me.
Okay, I would like to stop it right here because Ramola said that this is about a very specific subject, and that is Dr. Katherine Horton's defamation campaign that she has apparently launched against Ramola and against Melanie. Now, I would like to start straight here because she is making the allegation that I have run some sort of defamation campaign against Ramola, and I would like to show people straight away what we're dealing with in actual fact. I would like to point to my website, okay? And here you will find a page for Ramola Dharmaraj, and you will see it in this YouTube video. You can see it in the description below. Now, what this entire thing is about, and let me jump to the timeline, okay? I made a website which I called, you know, where I was speaking about Ramola's defamation campaign. And I made this website on the 12th of November. And I would like to show you the timeline of how all this started. And with this, I mean what I call Ramola's defamation campaign. The whole thing started at a time when my former colleagues and I still had what we call the Techno Crime Fighters Forum. The Techno Crime Fighters Forum was a weekly live show where we were reaching out to the general public and also to victims of extreme government targeting, and we were talking about these government crimes. The shows began in 2017 and they ran for about a year and a half. And there were 71 episodes in total. And after the 71st episode, the first entry you see is just a factual statement. On the 1st of August 2018, I met the financial advisor, Catherine Austin Fitz, who was really leading in her field. And I was looking forward to present what Catherine and I had talked about and my insights and this breakthrough of making contact with somebody quite so high profile and discuss these crimes with her. Now, I was waiting on the 2nd of August, a day later, I was waiting to be sent a link to join my own show, right, which I have started with Dr. Paul Marco, right? I first met Dr. Paul Marco. I had first my interviews, and I have suggested other people, and then Ramola as well. Then she was interviewed by Dr. Paul Marco, and then Dr. Paul Marco suggested that we make a platform because he'd heard about all these victims, and that's how we got onto this, okay? So if I want to be a real stickler, I would say I met Dr. Paul Marco first, but I'm not going to be like that. I'm just going to say this was a project by Dr. Paul Marco and Mindy Erkin, and they gave birth to this project. They launched it on their platform. As far as I'm concerned, it's their baby. It's not Ramola's, and it's not mine. Now, as many of you know, Dr. Paul Marco passed away, and Mindy Erkin has bequeathed this project to us, and it has been now been run since then. Dr. Paul Marco passed away in February, and then we were running it in February 2018, and we were running it since then. Okay, so we are now in August 2018, and as far as I'm concerned, right, this project belongs to all of us. What happened is that as this project was being run, Mindy Erkin, who was running it mostly the technical side, expressed the wish that, you know, really it's quite a lot of work. And then we suggested we can just take it over. Then Ramola volunteered and she said, okay, she's willing to host it on her channel. At the time, both Ramola and I had a channel. And I thought, okay, Ramola wants to be the journalist. That is just appropriate that she should run it. And I will focus on the investigation. and I'll focus on the physics and so on. So this is how it came about. But when we look at it in detail, Ramola did not have a monopoly, and she did not own this this show. So when she was running it every week, right, which means that she had the YouTube views, she had also the revenue, that was fine with me. But when it came to terminating Techno, it was not fine with me that Ramola did it single-handedly. And that's exactly what happened on the 2nd of August 2018. As I was waiting in the chat, I was absolutely unaware that Techno was going to be terminated in that episode and that I was not going to be invited. So it was a pretty big deal. And you can click on this link and you can have a look. And this is where everything started. Okay, now what I did on this page is I wrote down a timeline of how everything panned out. And with the timeline, I am just stating facts. So it is absolutely impossible to call this timeline a defamation campaign. If anybody is calling anything on this page a defamation, they have to provide proof that what I'm saying is a malicious falsehood. It has to be false and it has to be malicious. That's defamation. If I'm just making an innocent slip up and I get a date wrong, that's not necessarily defamation, right? One has to prove ill intent or something really egregiously wrong that I refuse to correct even when people point this out. To this day, that hasn't happened. So just me documenting what has happened is not defamation. When Ramola claims defamation, she has to point to an actual thing that is wrong here and has to prove that it's maliciously wrong. Now, I want to point out that on the next day, Ramola called Melanie Vritschan. So if you like, the English version of Techno came to an end, but Melanie and I had a German version, which we continued to run. And Melanie and I continued to be involved in a very important project, which was measuring the body implants, covert body implants at the university in Belgium. And I was given, you know, the reason to believe, and I was given also the invites from Melanie for that project that made it clear to me that my services as a physicist were required. And in fact, they were requested by Melanie many times. So this was an important collaboration. And at the time when this happened, there was not just the Techno Crime Fighters Forum, there was also the Joint Investigation Team. And the Joint Investigation Team was the group behind this website, okay? Now, if you go to JIT reports, you can see evidence that this Joint Investigation Team existed because you can see the who is who. And you can see who was involved from when till when, okay? Now, this group came to an end, it was broken up, and in the month of August, right, after Techno was terminated, the entire group broke up. Then Melanie and I carried this on, and sorry, I've just realized I haven't updated this. Right now, Melanie and I have also broken our collaboration, and right now I'm just continuing this investigation on my own. But for a year and a half, this was a 5-group investigation, and we intended to put out information material that victims can quote with police services and so on and so on. Okay. And the entire affidavit collection was meant to be run by all of us. The affidavit template I prepared was for this endeavor. So this joint investigation team existed at this time, okay? So, sorry, the timeline here. So what I then documented on this page is the number of allegations coming from people like Ramola, Thomas McFarlan, and actions that were taken by Ramola, like calling Melanie Vritschan and specifically asking to terminate her work collaboration with me, right? And I've documented this on my page. I've also documented how Ramola kept calling Melanie Vritschan. So Ramola is in Boston, United States. Melanie is in Brussels, in Belgium. And Ramola kept calling Melanie on a near daily basis, and this was confirmed by Melanie to me many times. Ramola kept calling Melanie on a daily basis, telling Melanie that I'm an agent and that Melanie should stop working with me. Now, this is character defamation, okay? And for this reason, I called this Ramola's Defamation Campaign. And if you look at the dates, you can see that our team broke up with the termination of Techno that Ramola undertook single-handed, because Karen didn't tell me about this, Millicent didn't tell me about this, right? And Karen didn't know that I was going to be excluded from the final broadcast. So these were actions taken single-handedly by Ramola. Now, this was on the 2nd of August, okay? 2nd of August. And when a group breaks up, every individual has the right to continue their life, right? And just leave. Now, I was not granted this permission to leave because this, a former colleague that I didn't work with anymore, took it upon herself to try to break up my other projects that I had with other people on another continent. And this went on from the 2nd of August all the way through to September, October, right? On it went, on it went, on it went to November. And then it culminated in December with these videos, okay? And it was the middle of December. And then on the 17th of December, after the second video, where I felt that after I was just working through the first video here, which was 2.5 hours long, report 99, I began uploading evidence, and then already the second video came out, an hour and a half. And this came out on the 15th of December. So on the 16th of December, I realized I just cannot keep up at the rate of these allegations. And on the 16th of December, I took legal advice in the US, and I paid for legal advice in the US, and I was advised to immediately file a cease and desist against Ramola Dharmaraj. And this is what I did. And I filed the form that the lawyer advised me to file. And I can prove that. I can prove the legal advice I had to take, and I can prove that these steps were exactly what my lawyer advised. And he said, well, if the woman is defaming you here, then you should file here a cease and desist against this person. Okay? And the entire form of this was discussed with him. Now, on the 19th of December, Ramola Dharmaraj, this is 2 days later, she ignored my cease and desist already and published a 44-page article, 44 pages, about me, and it was entitled Swiss Cheese and Bayonets, Katherine Horton's nasty defamation campaign, titled Ramola's Defamation Campaign. Now, that's already breaking the cease and desist. It's already making a new allegation that I have some kind of nasty defamation campaign against Ramola. And now I want to clarify, in this timeline, they are all her steps and they are all my steps. And you will notice the following. The whole thing started on the 2nd of August, okay? On the 6th of August, I made a public video about my view on the entire matter. And then that was it. There was silence. Between the 2nd of August and the 2nd, the 2nd of August of me replying and the 2nd of August of Ramola locking me out from my own broadcasts, and the 6th of August of me replying publicly, there were already other actions by Ramola, like calling Melanie Vritschan and telling her I'm an agent and that she shouldn't work with me. And also Thomas McFarlan contacted me, but at that time, the entire interaction with Thomas McFarlan was deceptively jovial and friendly. And there was absolutely no hint that, 3 weeks later, he would call me a very, very good actor, a highly skilled infiltrator, an agent provocateur, an outright imposter, a highly skilled social movement infiltrator, and Dr. Horton is an act, not a person. These allegations would come from Thomas McFarlan 3 weeks later without any evidence being produced by Thomas McFarlan. But anyway, so there were actions by Ramola, actions by Thomas, which maybe were two-faced, And then there was my reply, and everybody can listen to my reply. What happened then is Barbara Hartwell, CIA, waded in. Ramola republished Barbara Hartwell. Thomas McFarlan put out a defamatory video. Thomas McFarlan defamed me on Twitter. Thomas McFarlan put out the second defamatory video. Ramola brought out an article defaming me and republished Thomas McFarlan's videos. Then Thomas McFarlan defamed me on Twitter. Then the next day he defamed me on Twitter again. Then between the 3rd of September and the 19th of September, Ramola made daily calls to Melanie. And Melanie told me that she was being contacted daily by Ramola. And this is exactly the period when I was doing fundraising for Melanie on my channel. And then I was traveling to Brussels to do scanning with Melanie. So Ramola's actions directly impacted my colleague and my collaboration with my, at that time, colleague in Brussels. A very important project I was involved in, and I had invested thousands of euros of my own money into. Ramola, meanwhile, had invested zero. So these were malicious actions, yet I didn't respond. I held my tongue. And you can see it's already the 14th of October, right? And then on the 14th of October, new allegations were leveled against me by Ramola via Melanie. And it said, Melanie said to me that Ramola had alleged I had sabotaged Frédéric Laroche's court case. Okay, so on the 15th of October, I contacted Frédéric Laroche, and he confessed that this is something he said to Ramola, and it was a lie. And the confession by Frédéric Laroche is here. Yet I held my tongue. I never made that public at the time. These were uploaded later. They were not public at the time. So again, on the 16th of October, a day later, Melanie complained to me about Ramola having contacted her and having referred to me as an agent and having warned Melanie of my so-called agent activity. Again, I didn't say anything publicly. On the 19th of October, I received a public notice against Melanie, this time from Alfred Weber. And Alfred Weber asked me to stop my collaboration with Melanie. And the reasons for this are outlined below in this link and on this very same page. Now, on the 20th, and you can see how the days are ticking and people are doing things and I'm not doing anything publicly. So how the hell can this be called a defamation campaign? Meanwhile, Ramola is acting daily. So when she calls it my defamation campaign, this woman is lying. On the 20th of October, right, Millicent complained to me about statements that Melanie passed to her. All right, so Millicent contacted me and complained about statements, but these statements were given to her by Melanie. So this is again an action by Melanie to a former colleague of mine that I'm not involved in. Then on the 27th of October, Ramola published a libelous public notice against me. Okay. Then Ramola published a public notice on the 30th of October. And you will see that all this time, I didn't say a word publicly. And then on the 12th of November, after these public notices from Ramola, on the 27th of October and the 30th of October, I published this webpage. And I can prove from the timestamp on this webpage that this is the day it was created and published, on the 12th of November. Until then, so between the 12th of November here, and let's scroll down. So the orange stuff is me. This is all internal. This was never made public at the time. And the 6th of August, when I replied to being excluded from my own broadcast, between the 6th of August and the 12th of November, there's nothing from me. There's nothing from me. So how the hell can this be my defamation campaign when Ramola is taking all the action? And then at the time, my webpage just contained the timeline. And I began documenting the timeline because I wanted to highlight how ludicrous it is, all the things that were leveled against me behind my back and without me having a right to reply. Okay? So then, the day after, Ramola announced publicly, okay, that Dr. Horton is apparently paid to malign, sabotage, provoke, abuse, create a spectacle, grandstand, lie, engage in NLP, echo-stalking and mirroring, and hypnotize. Not necessarily in that order and not all to the same people. She has many under her spell. These were a new set of allegations from Ramola. The allegations include that I am paid and that I am paid specifically to malign, and therefore that I do malign, that I sabotage, that I provoke, that I abuse, create a spectacle, a grandstand, lie, engage in NLP, echo-stalking, mirroring, and hypnotize. These are 13 allegations, and they were new at the time. So on the 13th of November, Ramola created 13 new allegations. Because frankly, before, I haven't heard hypnotize, right? She mentioned echo-stalking, right? But create a spectacle, abuse, who the hell have I abused? I'm on a different continent, for God's sake. And is this typical for Ramola? As I'm writing here, she has no evidence for this, okay? Now, then on the 14th of November, Ramola published a second public notice, right? And all her public notices are apparently targeted at me, but they were never sent to me. She just publishes text on her blog. So she makes a public notice and then it's left to people who know both Ramola and me to pass it on to me. Well, in legal terms, I don't think this is appropriate. So if she's, you know, supposedly filing anything against me like a cease and desist, she has to send it to me, but she hasn't sent me anything. Then Ramola added the newest public libel on the 16th of November. The 21st of November, right, she published what she called a joint public cease and desist notice. And again, she didn't send it to me. So if you want somebody to cease and desist, you have to send it to them, dear child. You can't just publish it on your blog somewhere in cyberspace because I am not reading your blog. Besides, what the hell should I cease and desist when I'm just uploading evidence in the timeline? Now, by the 22nd of November, right, where between all of this, and you can read all the instances and click on the links and look at all the evidence, this is a long list. Between the 6th of August, when I replied, this was my right to reply to the allegations made here, and my explanation to my viewers why I didn't turn up anymore on the Techno Crime Fighters and how somehow the Techno Crime Fighters broadcast didn't exist anymore. Between this right to reply on the 6th of August and me replying on the 22nd of November, the only thing I had done is make a web page on the 12th of November with a timeline. Okay? And that is it. And then I began uploading evidence and using my right to reply to these allegations. Okay? And then on the 22nd of November, I came out, and after having witnessed all of this, including false claims that I had sabotaged Frederic Laroche's court case, which he himself confessed I had not, in writing, after having gone through all this, I published my do's and don'ts, and I put down the do's and don'ts for the community. Now, this video, the do's and don'ts, we can click on it. It is actually it is 4 hours long, but it's part of my workshops, my working group broadcasts. If we actually look at it, okay, It looks like 4 hours, but not the 4 hours. It's not all about this, okay? Because the first half is just my crime fighting workshop, formerly called the Holocaust Working Group. I had to change the title because YouTube would continuously demonetize it because it had the word Holocaust in it, okay? But now, the first hour and 50, so the first 2 hours are me just outlining do's and don'ts for victims in general. And part 2 is me responding to Ramola's malicious slander. So it's only the last 2 hours when I'm responding to her. It's not 4 hours long, as she will claim. In this video I'm responding to, it's only 2 hours long. And 2 hours is what I needed to respond to everything that happened between this 22nd of November, all of these allegations, right? Which included a court case, right? Which included non-stop defamation to my colleague and included allegations that I'm an agent. Yeah, that took 2 hours because frankly, I had to also reply to a 44-page note by Ramola. Sorry, where's that 44-page? Here, on the 19th. Oh, sorry, no. At the time, the 44-page wasn't there. But I remember distinctly that at the time, there was a 28-page document by Ramola. I had to go through 28 pages. I remember that distinctly because I showed it to a friend and I said, look at this, 28 pages of boomph with zero evidence. So this is what I did, okay? It took 2 hours exactly to reply to it. Now, this is on the 22nd of November, right? Then Barbara Hartwell published a response. Ramola republished the response. Then I had to go to France on the 29th of November, right, as an expert witness in the court case of Frédéric Laroche. And 3 days later, after coming back and after having reported about this court case publicly, my dear former colleagues put out this 2.5-hour libel video. Okay? And it is the timing, exactly 3 days after, and we all know how important the number 3 is. So how curious that after exactly 3 days of me having gone to court as an expert witness, there came a massive punishment in the form of a 2.5-hour video entirely dedicated to libeling me and leveling allegations against me that are not true. So imagine my joy, right? And then, because it also included allegations against me as an expert witness in this court case, imagine my joy on top of that. Okay? So on the 13th of December, and this is how long it took, right? This is how busy I was. It took me literally from the 2nd of December to the 13th before I even had the time to start uploading evidence. So I began uploading evidence to prove that Frédéric Laroche had lied and that Melanie had lied in this broadcast. Melanie lied in this broadcast, and that's what I uploaded evidence for. And then immediately on the next day, right, Ramola published a standing notice, again libeling me, making a bunch of allegations. Again, note the date, the 13th of December. Okay, exactly as I'm uploading evidence, there's already the next standing notice from Ramola. And then 2 days later, they come out with yet another 1.5 hour video. So it was because of this that literally when I was hit with another video and I hadn't even finished uploading the evidence to the first video, that's when I had enough. And that's when I contacted the lawyer and he said, yes, that is defamation. And yes, you should immediately file a cease and desist and then we take it from there. And then immediately, 2 days later, the cease and desist was broken when Ramola came out with this 44-page article claiming I ran a nasty defamation campaign against her. I am sorry, this is a lie. I have never run a defamation campaign against Ramola. This is a lie. And what I'm doing here is I'm responding to the allegations. So this is now the background. And when you hear her, you have to literally go through this entire page, right? From here, scroll. Every single entry is something being done against me. Everything in orange is something that I have to do to respond. And it goes on and on and on and on. And then we arrive at this video here. So imagine what it feels like when it's the 2nd of December and you split up with this woman on the 2nd of August. So, right? September, October, November, December. This is 4 months later. Let's count again. From the 2nd of August to the 2nd of September, it's 1, right? September 1, October 2, November 3, December 4. 4 months later, after splitting up with Ramola Dharmaraj, she comes out with this video. And then she has the cheek to lie publicly and call it my defamation campaign against her. She is lying, people. Now let's hear that again. And let's look at her good cheer as she is lying through her teeth. Let's just hear this again.
Hello, everyone. Good evening and welcome to this evening edition of Ramola D Reports. I'm here this evening with Melanie, and we're here to speak about a very particular and very specific subject, and that is Dr. Katherine Horton's defamation campaign that...
You heard it here, Dr. Katherine Horton's defamation campaign. And now please check the facts yourself. Go to this website that I've linked below the video, go through the timeline, and ask yourself, is this my defamation campaign or is this Ramola's defamation campaign? And look at this face. And meanwhile, Melanie closes her eyes because I think she knows. She knows very well because Ramola has been contacting her daily. And Melanie knows. And she literally blocks this out immediately. Look at this again. Melanie.
And we're here to speak about a very particular and very specific subject, and that is Dr. Katherine Horton's defamation campaign.
Did you see this? Look at her face. Look at her face again. She's smiling. Then she will go back when she hears Dr. Katherine Horton's defamation campaign. She will go back, her eyes will widen, and she will close her eyes. Look at this.
With Melanie, and we're here to speak about a very particular and very specific subject, and that is Dr. Katherine Horton's defamation campaign that she has apparently launched against myself.
And she starts blinking.
Melanie. So, hello, Melanie. Good evening.
And she closes her eyes and she swallows because Melanie knows this is bullshit. Melanie knows this is bullshit, and then she opens with this fake smile. And look at her eyes, how her eyes widened when she heard defamation campaign, Dr. Katherine Horton's defamation campaign. Let's just look at this again.
Hello, everyone. Good evening and welcome to this evening edition of Ramola D Reports. I'm here this evening with Melanie, and we're here to speak about a very particular and very specific subject, and that is Dr. Katherine Horton's defamation campaign that...
Did you see this?
And that is Dr. Katherine Horton's defamation campaign.
Melanie richly takes a step back, like, what? Her eyes widen. She passes her lips because the story doesn't match up with the facts.
That she has apparently
and then she starts blinking fast.
And against Melanie. So...
Did you see this? And against Melanie, and Melanie closes her eyes and she swallows.
Hello, Melanie. Good evening. Thanks for joining me.
And then she puts up a fake smile, and that's because Melanie knows it's a lie. And her body language has just betrayed that she knows it's a lie. Right? I ran a defamation campaign against you and against Melanie. Let's just hear this again.
Katherine Horton's defamation campaign that she has apparently launched against myself and against Melanie. So, hello, Melanie. Good evening. Thanks for joining me.
Hello, Ramola. It's a pleasure to be here. Although I thought long and hard about this.
Really? Have you thought long and hard about this? Well, I'm going to prove otherwise soon, because you haven't looked at the facts.
Where I should do that, but I've come to the conclusion that it is really necessary in the light of what has been going on. Yes, absolutely. Katherine Horton has published. Yes, I absolutely agree with you at this point, Melanie. I think at this point, after this most recent video that Katherine has put out, which is so insanely over the top, with its accusations, allegations, and just plain foul language.
Just listen to the tone of this. By the way, the video they are referring to is this one, the do's and don'ts. And you can listen to the whole 4 hours, but you don't need to, because the first 2 are nothing to do with Ramola or Melanie. If you click on this link at 1:50, you can hear me start talking. A bit of bullshit intermixed with good stuff. Now let's talk about stuff that I consider to be 100% bullshit. And I am really sorry to have to bring it up, but I really want to use the remaining couple of minutes to make a public statement. Well, this couple of minutes turned into 2 hours because I really got going. So very fed up I am. And how I just want to have a cut, and everything I talked about today is what I want to focus on, what I have been focusing on all the past months and weeks, and what I please want to be left alone with to focus on. Okay. So here you can see that the first 2 hours had nothing to do with these women, because they were my real work of doing outreach and helping other victims. And this is what I make very clear. So from these sentences, it's already clear that what you need to focus on, if you want to wade through all this, is the last 2 hours. And I encourage you, should you really want to debunk the lies of these women, just listen to me as I'm explaining my reasons for action, and I'm answering all the allegations in detail, and then compare this, what I'm saying, to how it's being portrayed by Ramola. Okay? Because you can go through, you can click your way through, you don't even have to listen. Just listen to the way I talk. Okay? So, what I'm referring to is the long saga, long-standing, never-ending saga that started with the breakup of the Techno Crime Fighters Forum. And I am bringing it up today, even though I really don't want to, because, again, there's just, references to me and implications and here and there, and also because lots of victims have asked me, so what exactly is going on? And I've donated money, to you and Melanie's cause, and you're not working together anymore, and you've never made a public statement. So what the hell's going on? What's going on with Ramola? Are you an agent? Are you an imposter? Are you an actor? And I get all these accusations that I have to keep defending myself from. And frankly, that's really pissing me off, because I am working to a very high standard. And at the moment, at this point in time, Dr. John Hall works as a court expert. Dr. Hildegard Stanninger works as a court expert, both of whom I think received death threats. And I'm working as a court expert, and I received death threats, but people making these accusations do not meet the standard. They do not put themselves under the threat of 15,000 euro fines, fines, and the threat of a year in jail by standing up for other people. These are the potential penalties should anybody have a problem with your expert testimony in a French court, by the way. Okay, so these are real things that I put myself through. They do not necessarily file all their statements in court, and I do. So please, let's attach weights to certain statements here. And let's also realize that if you're under the scrutiny of the courts and you want to appear as a court expert, that certain off-the-cuff remarks, or remarks that are maybe said in anger or for whatever reasons, can be extremely damaging. And in a situation in Europe where, apart from me, there are no court experts, Dr. John Hall is in the US, Dr. Hildegard Stanninger in the US, they can fly out here, but it's a lot of work and costs a lot of money. And at this moment in time, there are live running court cases where I am sadly the only court expert. So flinging shit for vacuous reasons without evidence is extremely damaging. So I thought I was making it very, very clear here. Okay. So
and it damages people who I would help if this stuff hadn't damaged me.
So this is my point, basically, okay? If you make allegations and they're running court cases, you have to meet a very high standard, but they haven't met the high standard. And then you can listen to the entire 2 hours where I'm explaining everything, I'm showing everything, I'm flashing up documents, and you can go through it. And then I explain my reasons. And remember that this video here came on the 22nd of November, 2018, right? Which is after all this long list of stuff. It came here. Okay. So just please put it in context when these two women talk about, you know, my video, and then let's just go through it again and let's just listen to how Ramola refers to it again.
This point, Melanie, I think at this point, after this most recent video that Katherine has put out, which is so insanely over the top, with its accusations, allegations, and just plain foul language.
Did you hear the kind of primary school teacher emphasis on foul language? We have an actual live Holocaust going on, people, right? My grandparents were murdered. My father was almost murdered. I was almost murdered several times over. Is really our biggest problem if somebody says fuck? Have we really lost our fucking minds so much that we think this is something even worth mentioning? And have I not amply expressed, and many times to my colleagues, that I refuse to stop swearing for very, very good reasons? And at this stage, please let me allow me to recap why I continue to swear and why it is actually, as a matter of fact, extremely important to me, right? Let's just recap. Number one, it is freedom of speech. And I think the entire narrowing down of language and getting rid of emotional words that really convey emotion very strongly to other people was done by psychopaths, and it was done by people who were very traumatized, because remember, the upper classes who used to be very stuck up were precisely the same upper classes who used to be sodomized as young children for MK Ultra. Okay, so the two go kind of hand in hand. So psychopaths don't want us to activate others through emotions. So they're kind of forcing us into non-emotive language, whereas what's natural for human beings is highly emotive language. You know, it's to talk with your hands. It's to use the words that really express what you feel, to have facial expressions. But instead, we should have the psychopath CNN voice, where even if we're talking about mass murder of people, we should have a plain face, the same tone of voice, and never ever swear and say how fucking ridiculous it is, because that would immediately wake people up. So it's a psychopath's trick, people. Not swearing, not being emotional, and not being extreme is a psychopath's trick. That's a very important point. Keep that in mind. It is not natural to have human beings, like all of our TV anchors, report about the genocide and showing zero emotion. It means that what they are in, it automatically means what they are in is a psychopathic culture. It's a psychopath system, and they are trying to fit in, but it's psychopathic. Okay? This is why I want to make it absolutely clear that I have a lot of emotion, and I want to keep imparting it on you, because that is what's going to activate the network. And I'm all about, as I say many times, using network mathematics, using our networks and reaching out over networks. And people who are non-psychopaths immediately respond to emotion, immediately. It is impossible not to. We are genetically predetermined. So Ramola is basically asking me to junk that because the woman doesn't understand network maths. She hasn't really thought it through. She doesn't understand human psychology. And frankly, she hasn't thought about it even like, hundreds as much as I have. So these are bullshit reasons. So not showing emotion, not to swear, is a psychopathic thing to do. That's why I reject it. Number two, it's freedom of speech. I can use the full Oxford English Dictionary if I so choose. Any number of letters of words. The only thing that matters is, do I convey my message, and do I get it into other people's heads, and do I activate other human beings to understand, to feel, and then to get going? That's the only thing that matters. If swearing helps, then we have to swear, because we're in a genocide and we don't have the leisure to hold back on methods we could use just because we want to sound like, you know, the Queen's maid. So I am not going to give up swearing. So again, let's recap. It's because not swearing and being absolutely zero emotion, a zero emotion appearance is a psychopathic thing to do. It is the telltale sign of psychopathic environments like the news media, where they report about mass genocide with a face as if they were just reporting the weather. Just look at it. Just look at all these news anchors. They are fucking psychopaths, you would think, but then some of them are not, but they have to mold themselves into a system devised by psychopaths for our manipulation. So it's wrong. You guys were all, you know, brought up, you were all weaned on a psychopathic material. This is not normal. People in the medieval ages didn't used to be like that. If you told your news to somebody, to your family, or in a pub, or in a town square, you showed emotion, you shouted, you waved your arms around, and you swore. And it was natural. So how the hell did we go away from that? And is it good that we got away from that? Isn't it, you know, isn't the fact that we ended up in a genocide exactly telling us that we've done a lot of things wrong? And maybe not, you know, communicating important stuff in a way that's emotive. Maybe that was one of the mistakes. Had our anchors sworn and shouted, perhaps we would have paid more attention. So, you know, psychopathic environments, freedom of speech. Point number 3 is, I am sorry, the Americans are so stuck up, it feels painful. It just feels painful to watch. I think the Americans haven't really noticed that the rest of the world moved on, right? And I think they're still hankering after pretending to be just as posh as the, you know, the British Queen, not realizing that the Queen herself is married to a sailor and she will get an earful every single day of this stuff. I don't think the Queen's gonna faint hearing fuck anytime soon, right? So this is all fake, people. And certainly in Oxford, in London, at CERN, saying the F word, saying the C word happened all the time. It doesn't mean you can't work at CERN and be a highly regarded, you know, scientist, because I've heard highly regarded scientists swear. By the way, I also heard highly regarded scientists swear who are particle physicists who appear on TV. You can, you know, maybe have an educated guess who that might be. I heard them say all that. I'm not going to think, oh, you're not going to be, you know, I'm not going to look at you the same way. No, they were all brilliant physicists. So this is all a fraud, people. And I'm sorry, I've been to these places. I've got the t-shirts. I was a fellow at Oxford. I worked as a physicist at CERN. You know, a woman who's teaching creative writing in Boston is not going to tell me what I can or cannot do being a fellow at Oxford or being a physicist at CERN or a physicist at Daisy. So let's forget about this. I'm telling you, you hear it from the horse's mouth. You can go to Oxford and you can swear as much as you like. People will judge you by your academic content, not by the number of letters in your words when you get angry over something over lunch, you know? So that's another thing. It's all fake, okay? And then finally, right? So it's the American versus British thing as well, right? It's a fake. This whole thing of not swearing is fake. If you've ever been to including high society, you will realize it's fake, right? It's just put on for show, for TV, okay? And then the other thing is, I insist on swearing. Oh, sorry. So the other thing is, yes, American versus British. The British don't have a problem. The Americans do. And yet the Americans have guns everywhere. This is what really gets us continentals. You're a bunch of gun-toting, murdering psychopaths with a super fucked in the head military, killing everybody around the world. But, oh, don't say fuck, because then you guys faint. I mean, how does this add up? Isn't it a sign of your mental illness that you guys are like that? Okay. Now, this is another thing. So the British versus American, the rest of the world versus American, and then specifically, I'm Hungarian. And I'm sorry, in Hungary, we swear. Okay? We had a prime minister give a speech that was so laden with swear words that even the Times, which is not as bad as the American press, even they fainted. And when I read the article in original Hungarian, I didn't even notice the swearing. So in Hungarian, okay, there's a lot more allowed that's not even allowed in British English. And I'm sorry, it is my Hungarian identity, and I don't see why I should change the way I am. I have a right to life, and I have a right to being the way I am and the way my culture is. And there might be good things about that. For example, we're possibly not quite as anal and as stuck up as the British. And perhaps that's because we were not gang raped and sodomized at boarding school. Perhaps the two, correlate. So yes, I'm proud of that. And yes, I think swearing has its place in society, especially when you're talking about extreme things, which I'm doing most of the time. Okay? I'm talking about genocides and about mass murders and about covert killings. Of course I can be emotive. And then on top of that, I'm also a Holocaust victim myself, with actual mutilation happening to me every single day, and I can't do anything about that. If anybody has got a lifelong license to swear, it's me. And then the final point is, and I've stopped counting, I think I had 4 points, valid points by now. The fifth point about swearing is specifically that it snaps other victims out of learned helplessness. Ramola pretends this is a minor point. It absolutely is not. And you only notice the difference when you really rant over broadcast, and then suddenly you have all these victims write to you and say how you gave them courage. What the fuck gave them courage? I'm saying the same stuff every single broadcast. What actually gave them courage was the imparting of my energy onto them that went straight from my mouth over the words into their ears, and suddenly just the ferocity of the words made them snap out of it. Because I'm telling them it's okay to be angry. It's okay to be aggressive. It's okay to fight back. And you need to be aggressive to fight back against people who want to kill you. So for these reasons, and I have explained it many times, and many of these reasons are highly academic, like the psychological effect of learned helplessness and using swearing to get out of it. That actually is worth an entire therapy module, if I were a psychiatrist. So it's not a trivial point. It is not a trivial point. And I will not allow absolutely women who come across like primary school teachers, I will not allow those women to wipe these points, highly academic points that I've really thought about. I will not allow them to wipe them off the table. And that's my final word about the fucking swearing. It has a place, and I know when to use it. And sometimes I use it for some people who are not being killed, maybe in the wrong way, but then I'm not talking to them. I'm using it for the people who are in pain. And for those people, my anger is sometimes what keeps them going another day. And people have said that to me in writing. So I will not give up to swearing. And besides, I also don't think that having a panel of 4 people when one person is the enfant terrible, I don't think that that's going to color off, onto the others, as if we were some kind of intensely colored laundry in the wash. It's not going to color off. No one's going to hear me swear and then think, oh, I will never look at Karen or Millicent the same way. No one thinks like that. Everybody can tell our individual personalities apart. If anything, me swearing like a sailor just shows how much classier those women are. The contrast becomes highlighted, whereas maybe if I had a cut class British accent and I would sound like the upper classes, maybe it would make everybody else sound like, oh, middle class, which is what we all are. So let's be glad I don't sound like that, I mean, really, it just doesn't tally. These accusations about the swearing just don't make any sense, okay? they don't make sense. The more you think about it, really think about it, the more you realize it's all bollocks. Okay, so anyway, so much about the swearing. Now let me get back to it. And the reason why I make it a big point is because ostensibly the swearing was presented as one of the reasons why Techno was terminated. Terminating a lifeline to thousands of victims for swearing, you know, you would have something wrong with your head to do something like that, right? But anyway, this was one of the reasons that was presented. So that's why I have to talk about it so much. The real reason why we had this massive argument and then Techno was terminated in a huff was that Ramola wanted to leave because, as she wrote in an email, she had other projects she wanted to do, like her writing, like her prose writing, not just journalistic, which is okay. And I made the mistake to suggest that then I can host Techno on my channel. And then she hit the roof. Now, this is how the argument started. And this is something that never, ever enters the discussion. And it was covered up by Ramola pulling in the swearing and using it as a cover. But this is not where the argument started. And I can prove it because the week before, I had just sworn as much as I always do. And after the show, we were talking about expanding it to have dedicated episodes where we are going through Millicent's classified documents. We were talking about expanding our public broadcasting. I needn't to have been involved in that, right? They could have said, oh, frankly, we don't really want you on that show. That's fine, right? But that's not what it was about. The entire argument that led to the breakup was Ramola wanting to leave and me daring to insult her by saying that, frankly, I can, host the show as well. And what she said is, no, I can't, because she already put her journalistic seal on it. Now, that for me is usurping a team project for one's own purposes. And I don't think that is right, quite honestly. To be absolutely frank with you, I had a massive, massive problem with Ramola making these remarks. And I told her, and that's what the argument was about. That's what the real argument was about, people. Never entered the entire discussion because I was cut off. And I think that's exactly why Ramola cut me off. Because if she had made the allegations on the show in my presence, I would have destroyed that straight away with one sentence, which is, hang on, Ramola, the whole thing started with you wanting to leave and you getting offended that I said I can host a show. Right? So that's another thing I want to put on the record here. And I've got the emails to prove that. So let's just get back because I only got through the opening sequence.
Addressed at me.
Okay, so, and just please one more time and listen with all these arguments pro swearing, listen to this and just try to understand why I really, really get pissed off when I hear this primary school teacher emphasis on the swearing.
Going on. Yes, absolutely. Katherine Horton has published. Yes, I absolutely agree with you at this point, Melanie. I think at this point, after this most recent video that Katherine has put out, which is so insanely over the top, with its accusations, allegations, and just plain foul language, addressed at me and directed also at you, directed at CIA whistleblower Barbara Hartwell, directed at journalist Thomas McFarlan and various others, and accusing all of us of running some kind of campaign against her, particularly me. And, you know, I have a lot to say about her myself. And I am actually going to do a written response to Katherine because, as you know, I love to write. And I can't stop myself from writing. So I will be writing.
Look at these women. They think it's a laugh. They think it's just a fun thing to write about me and run a defamation campaign against me. They think it's just a lark. Women, you're actually doing something that I can litigate against. You're committing an offense. You are violating my rights to my reputation without any evidence. And you're giggling like little girls.
However, I understand you wished more than writing to actually read out a statement or to speak openly about it.
By the way, before we go on, I've just noticed something else, which is that Melanie, let me just go back. I just noticed another thing. When Ramola is talking about me running a defamation campaign again, Melanie has to cover her eyes. She's blinking emphatically again. So let me just go back again. I will point this out.
Yes, absolutely. Katherine Horton has published. Yes, I absolutely agree with you at this point, Melanie.
By the way, you will also hear how Ramola says that in that video, I leveled accusations and allegations, and it was insanely over the top. This is the do's and don'ts video, which was my right to reply. I don't think I leveled any allegations that I couldn't prove. So there we go.
I think at this point, after this most recent video that Katherine has put out, which is so insanely over the top, with its accusations, allegations, and just plain foul language addressed at me and directed also at you, directed at CIA whistleblower Barbara Hartwell, directed at journalist Thomas McFarlan and various others, and accusing all of us of running some kind of campaign against her, particularly me. And you know, I have a lot to say about her myself, and I am actually going to do a written response to Katherine, because as you know, I love to write, and I can't stop myself from writing, so I will be writing. However, I understand you wished more than writing to actually read out a statement or to speak openly about it in a video, right? Yes, that's correct. And in fact, the video, the precise video we're talking about, was called Do's and Don'ts, Working Group 2, Stop 007. And it is really quite a defamatory video. As you very rightly said, that you know, it was mainly directed at the two of us, but also other human rights activists, true activists that were, in my view, slandered. Maligned and slandered. Absolutely, I couldn't agree with you more.
So hang on, who are these other human rights activists, true activists, as they said? They are Barbara Hartwell, CIA, and Thomas McFarlan, who I also suspect of being CIA, but that's my personal opinion. Thomas McFarlan cannot be called an activist because he has only put out about 4 articles. One of them on targeted individuals, I think the others on other stuff. 4 articles, no one knows who the hell you are, you came out of nowhere, you live in your mom's basement, and that makes you an activist if you put out 4 articles out of the blue on Steemit? Really? Is that an activist? I don't frickin' think so. Meanwhile, Barbara Hartwell, well, what exactly is she, an activist for? The only thing I know about her is that she is slandering everything that Ted Gunderson was an activist for and fought for and was murdered for. And you should know that I personally do not believe a single word Barbara Hartwell says. I do not believe a single word Barbara Hartwell says. So, for me, Barbara Hartwell is not an activist. She's not an activist. I think she's a disinfo agent. That's my view. And Thomas McFarlan is not an activist. He has put out 4 articles on Steemit, or whatever this site is called. And that's it. That is literally it. Oh, yes. And he also made a long video about me, which, was the defamatory video that I've got an issue with. And I didn't malign or slander them. I pointed them out that they had no standing. That's what I did. They had no truck in this entire issue, and they came out of nowhere. And the other thing is that they were not providing evidence to a high enough standard to even get involved. That's what my point is. I didn't malign or slander them. I just said what I really think.
I don't know what it is with Katherine these days, but she seems to have stepped completely off any kind of normal or understandable or comprehensible behavior. She is attacking people wholesale, directly and to the face. And she appears to believe that she can do this.
That is rich coming from her. That is so rich coming from this woman. Let's just hear it again. What did she just say? Because it blew my fucking mind.
Two of us, but also other human rights activists, true activists, that were, in my view, slandered. Maligned and slandered. Absolutely, I couldn't agree with you more. I don't know what it is with Katherine these days, but she seems to have stepped completely off any kind of normal or understandable or comprehensible behavior.
So let's just take this bit by bit. Katherine seems to have stepped completely off any kind of normal or understandable or comprehensible behavior. Now that is a thick allegation. Is it really stepping out of any kind of normal, understandable, or comprehensible behavior after you have watched a former colleague of yours run a defamation campaign, call another colleague with whom you're still working on a daily basis, calling you an intelligence agent, then claiming that you have sabotaged a court case that you're still involved with, right? Then publishing article after article about you, accusing you that you're apparently paid to malign, sabotage, provoke, abuse, create a spectacle, grandstand, lie, engage in NLP, echo-stalking, and mirroring, and hypnotize. I don't even know how to hypnotize people. I can send people to sleep with my lectures. That's about it, right? And that I have many under my spell. So is it really outside or completely off any kind of normal, understandable, or comprehensible behavior that after all this, I would put out a video and I would use my right to reply? Really? But if these women make these allegations, I ask you to invite them to provide the evidence. Ask them, where exactly, my dear child, do you have the impression that Katherine Horton did something that is not normal, not understandable, or not comprehensible behavior? Point me to her precise video and the precise minute mark. That's what you need to do to debunk these smears, because these are already smears, and Ramola has a talent, a well-honed talent, to just slip in these allegations, and people who just listen to this like a radio broadcast and don't question it, take it to be gospel. They will go away thinking that Katherine Horton has now stepped completely off any kind of normal or understandable or comprehensible behavior, which she has not. Now on it goes. So she is
attacking people wholesale, directly, and to the face.
Am I? Am I attacking people wholesale, directly, and to the face? Excuse me, that is what Thomas McFarlan did publicly. That is what Barbara Hartwell did publicly, right? And that's what you did publicly, dear Ramola. What I'm doing is I'm using my right to reply. And I have a right on one level with you lot to express my views, come with evidence, show the facts, and express my views from my point of view. I am totally within my rights. And I'm within my rights to say, which is the truth, that Thomas McFarlan is a guy nobody knew, who came out of the blue and who lives in his mother's basement. That's a fact. It's also a fact he only wrote 4 articles. I cannot discern any consistent campaigning, right? With Barbara Hartwell, I am within my rights to state that I don't believe a frickin' word she's saying and that I believe her to be a disinfo agent. That is just, and the facts I'm advancing to back that up is the fact that I cannot discern what earth-shattering whistleblowing this woman has done. What I can discern is the earth-shattering whistleblowing Ted Gunderson has done, because he was talking about child trafficking on an industrial scale and Satanism and child sacrifice going to the highest levels. And in the day when he first talked about this, it was something you got murdered for. And he did get murdered for this. And as the former, head of an FBI, what's it called? He was the special agent in charge of FBI, was it Los Angeles? That meant a lot coming from him. and that's why he was murdered. Barbara Hartwell, I can't really see anything on the same caliber coming from her. What has she blown the whistle on that is so earth-shattering? I cannot see it. But she spends an awful lot of time telling us that Ted Gunderson was an evil person, and really, we should really reconsider what he really said. Well, when I'm listening to Ted Gunderson, all I see is, my God, he really blew the lid off an actual child trafficking, satanistic human sacrifice industry. And we also know that he got murdered. He was poisoned with arsenic. His own doctor is on public record stating that Ted Gunderson was poisoned with arsenic. So, anyway.
And she appears to believe that she can do this.
Yes, my dear. I don't just appear to believe, I actually state that I have a right to reply in public. That's it. Yes, I do strongly believe that I have a right to reply.
And as you know, I have been sending her public notices to cease and desist.
That's a lie. That's a lie. She has never sent me anything since the breakup of Techno. I was included on a mass email list where she was complaining about infiltrators, like masses of infiltrators in the victim community, to many people, including Bill Binney and Kirk Wiebe. I was included on that email, but it was not addressed to me. I was one addressee out of, I think, 180 or something like that. Let's hear this line again.
And she appears to believe that she can do this. And as you know, I have been sending her public notices to cease and desist.
There you heard it. She claims to have sent me public notices to cease and desist. Ramola has never sent me anything. She has published text on her blog. Big difference legally. Big fat difference. Because I am not under any obligation to read Ramola's blog. However, if she wants to have a legal cease and desist, she needs to send it to me. And she has not. She claims here to have done taken a legal step, which she has not taken. She has never sent me anything. She published text on her blog, which I don't read.
And we together sent her a joint public notice that was signed by you, me, Thomas McFarlan, and Paul Baird.
That's interesting, because I also didn't get that. Again, what she did is she published text on her private blog. She published text, and then she's now telling me that there were also the names of Thomas McFarlan, what coincidence, that guy again, Paul Baird, who I've never met. I have no dealings with Paul Baird, Melanie, and her. Right. Well, I'm sorry, dear child, you haven't sent anything. What you are doing now is you're making a public lie that you have taken some form of legal action that you haven't taken. Because sending me a cease and desist is a legal step. Publishing text on your blog is not, right? And then claiming on a broadcast on a YouTube channel that you are running, that you have taken a legal step that involves me is actually, frankly, a lie. So let's hear the sentence again.
That she can do this. And as you know, I have been sending her public notices to cease and desist, and we together sent her a joint public notice that was signed by you, me, Thomas McFarlan, and Paul Baird. And it has had no effect whatsoever. Her page, her libellous page, is still up.
Hang on a second, and it had no effect whatsoever. Well, maybe that is because you just published text on your blog, Ramola. If you want something to have an effect on a person, you need to send it to that person, especially if that person is very busy, especially if that person, for historical reasons, makes a point out of not reading your blog, right? And maybe hasn't got an interest in reading your blog because she works in the same field as you are working, right? And finally, how on earth, right, do you expect that you're publishing text on your blog And then that will make a woman who isn't reading your blog, is also a Holocaust victim. That's what I wanted to add, right? So she is really put under. She has even less time than a normally busy person. How on earth do you imagine you putting text on your blog is going to make another person out there do something for you, and maybe do something as drastic as take a web page offline that they have put up as a public kind of documentation of what you are doing against them? How on earth does that work in your head, Ramola, please? Maybe think about that.
And her, I think it was shortly after we published that, really, that she went and did her video where she ranted and raved about us.
Did you notice the subtle smear where she ranted and raved about us? No, Ramola, I used my right to reply. I used my right to reply. I didn't rant and I didn't rave about you two. I went through all the points you levied against me and I replied. This is not ranting and raving. This is using a right to reply. And now I was just smeared by Ramola again.
We published that, really, that she went and did her video where she ranted and raved about us. So,
and look at this way of striking the hair out of her face. Look carefully at that, because apparently it's copyrighted. Apparently it was echo-stalking, because she imagined that I push the hair out of my face in exactly the same way as she's doing. And just for the record, maybe have a look at my hair, how it's pinned up, and imagine how many times I would reach over and do this. How many times did you see me do that? How many times do I go like this? Like 0, because most of the time I don't need to, because my face is free of hair, because typically it's pinned up. Precisely so that I can work at the laptop, not have hair fall into my face, right? So as a no bullshit physicist, I'm most of the time sitting like this. It saves me a lot of hand action. But I'm making a big point out of this because these were part of the allegations, including me echoing her mug colors. Okay, sorry, I'm slipping down here. Me echoing her mug colors, me echoing her shirt colors, right? Her shirt colors and what she was wearing. I mean, we don't really see each other further down than this, okay? And I am not really a fashionista, a fashion doll. So, but mugs, what she was wearing was echoed, and the way she strikes, her hair out of her face. These were the 3 allegations I got from her, and I was like, fuck me. I mean, I already showed them in the do's and don'ts. I think I showed the rack with my mugs, most of which have been smashed up by Intel. So I think I've got about 3 or 4 left. 1 purple, 1 dark blue, and 2 beige, and that's it. That's it. Those are the mugs I'm using. So with these 3 colors, how can I do a fantastical color stalking with mugs? Okay, now this is one thing. The other thing is my fashion style is not really Ramola's, right? And I cannot afford the type of expensive blouses and clothes. So I wear very dorky, dowdy physicist outfits. I would have never thought a woman would, have a problem with that. It's like the least challenging, most boring outfit I could possibly appear in. Okay, so, but then also the way of striking hair out of her face. So watch that, okay? You really have to watch that and know that this is one of the allegations levied against me.
At this point, I think
don't do that, girls. Girls, don't do that. Have a good look what you're not meant to do.
Libella's page is still up. And her, I think it was shortly after we published that, really, that she went and did her video where she ranted and raved about us. So at this point,
girls, never ever strike hair out of your face like that if you're in the vicinity of Ramola, because that hand movement is copyrighted by Miss Dharmaraj.
I think, it's gloves off. Yeah.
The gloves are off, definitely. And she ranted and raved, as you said, for about 4 hours.
Excuse me, what that was that, Melanie? Let's just hear that again.
And she ranted and raved, as you said, for about 4 hours.
Oh my God. Who has that kind of time?
Who has that kind of time? You, my dear. You, my dear. Let's just do this again. Let's just do the maths. Here is you two saying I ranted and raved for 4 hours. Now, let's just go back to the do's and don'ts video and let's remind ourselves, even though it's 4 hours long, the first 2 hours are just my workshop. And it starts, and I put the contents here, at 1 hour 50. So from 1 hour 50 to 4 hour 10, right? I make that 2 hours and 20 minutes. 2 hours and 20 minutes. And this comes after months and months of accusations from Ramola, including that I have sabotaged the court case, that I hypnotize people, that I'm paid to malign, and so on, and that I'm an intelligence agent. 2 hours, 20 minutes. Meanwhile, you, my dears, who has got that time? And then look at the laughs. Well, let's just tot this up. This is 2.5 hours down here. Report number 99 dedicated to me. 2 hours 30. Report 103 dedicated to me. 1 hour 20. Well, I make that together 4 hours. That's exactly 4 hours. Okay, well, give or take a few minutes here because this is 2:32, right? Plus 1:22, right? Is 3 hours and 54. So you are 6 minutes short of 4 hours. And what's so funny is that you are laughing because you women didn't bother to actually listen to my video. In other words, in very, very, very crude language, it's called you're talking out of your asses, my dears, because you never actually checked the facts. I didn't rant and rave about you lot for 4 hours. I gave a 2-hour presentation. I only wanted to say a couple of words, but then I really got into it. And I ended up talking another 2 hours, 20 minutes about replying to all the allegations. Because suddenly something hit me and I thought I might as well do it now and be done with it. So I spent 2 hours and 20 minutes. And meanwhile, you guys, look how funny it is. Isn't it funny? It's hilarious. You guys spent a total of 4 hours then slandering me. 3 hours and 54 to be precise. So let's just hear this again. And this time, please, everybody, let's laugh with these women because it is really funny, isn't it?
So off, definitely. And she ranted and raved, as you said, for about 4 hours.
Oh my God. Who has that kind of time?
Yeah, exactly. I don't have the...
Who has that kind of time? Says the woman who proceeds to slander this woman that she's talking about for precisely 4 hours. I mean, doesn't that make you crack up?
How do you say, the ambition to top that at all, but it was very important to me that...
Well, you just topped it, Melanie. I have to say you just topped it because you spent 2 hours, I spent 2 hours 20 responding to Ramola, and then you spent exactly 4 hours, or 3:54 to be precise, 3 hours 54 minutes, with talking about me. I think you topped it, Melanie.
That I would clear a few things here publicly. So I've written a paper which I would like to read out, and of course you can interject like you always do, and we can talk about several points if if they need further explanation.
Sure.
But I think it's really important now to put all this out and clear my name, totally yours anyway, and refute all the slander.
Absolutely. And I wondered perhaps, Melanie, before we started on your statement, if we could just share screens and show people the particular video that we mean that she has made so they can check it out for themselves. If they haven't heard her ranting and raving as yet, they are invited to go hear it for themselves.
I invite you to go and hear it for yourself and decide if you would call it ranting and raving, which is now the 3rd time they have repeated it. Ranting and raving was a phrase first introduced by Ramola. Then Melanie used that smear against me in the passage I've just highlighted, and now they say it again, ranted and raved. I can just count the number of times here because I've got the transcript in front of me. How often it has been said? I think it's about 3 times. Okay, ranted and raved. That's a smear. And you are smearing somebody who's a Holocaust victim and who's using just her right to reply to your ludicrous allegations. Think about that, women. Think about that.
Good idea. Yeah.
So, did you want to do that, or shall I do that?
Could you do it? Because
Okay, let me try. I think I pulled it up somewhere. Okay, so this is the video. If you can see my screen.
Yes.
I'm going to move down a little so people can see the title of her video. And
that's the one, yes.
Okay, Do's and Don'ts Working Group 2, Stop 007. And God, I don't even have the heart to play it because it's just so full of invective. But
did you hear that? I don't even have the heart to play it because it's so full of invective. Well, I am sorry, but that is again a smear, and it's also misleading the viewers. Just before she's about to present evidence to the contrary, she holds back, because if she would play the play button, I would just talk to you normally like I always talk. There's no difference between me talking now, me having talked on Techno, and me talking in real life. I sound that intense. It's not ranting and raving, it's me just expressing myself. So if you have been weaned on CNN psychopaths, maybe it rattles your cage, but if you're normal, it shouldn't, especially not if you're a Holocaust victim. So again, look how carefully Ramola avoids showing you any real evidence. She gives you the impression that you've seen evidence, but this is not played. And do you think this is the face of a woman who's ranting and raving? You know, no, I'm just opening a workshop. People tune into it. I mean, here, almost 2.5 thousand people have tuned in to hear this. You know, and it's something I do regularly. And most of the time, I'm not talking about them. I'm talking about general advice for victims and about measurements. And then what is so funny is that these women point at the video and they reveal that they couldn't even be bothered to listen to it and look for evidence, because if they had, they would have noticed that the first half wasn't anything about them. Nothing about them. So these women haven't checked the facts. They are talking out of their asses. And I've just proven you evidence by showing you the actual minute mark at 1 minute 50, which is roughly here. That's when I start talking about this, about them and about the allegations against me. So these women reveal that they haven't checked the facts. And yet, by talking like that in public, they cause me work. So basically, I get total trash, and I have to work really hard to make it clear just how much trash these women talk. And if I don't, my reputation is damaged by these women.
If there's any timestamp that you would like to play as a little clip, just let me know.
Okay, thank you.
But do they play any clips? They don't. They will never refer to this video ever again. They will not show you any clips. They don't. If these women had actually referred to specific clips and specific problems they had with it, I would have had an easier time replying to them. But they do not. They just make general, slanderous remarks. They smear me with the expression ranting and raving, which is just absolutely not justified.
So I will start to read out my statement.
Oh, okay. So let me also actually, before we do that, I want to come back to you. So I want to just show, because I'm sharing screens right now, I'll show the page that she created with my name on it.
Oh, yes. Okay.
So here, yeah, the famous Blacklist, blood on their hands page, those who refused assistance, sabotaged, or actively attacked, which is a joke.
Okay, so let's see.
And she's got various people here: Dr. Robert Duncan, Bryan Tew, Todd Giffen, Kaspar, Thomas McFarlan, and myself.
And I have to grant Ramola that she pointed this out, and I was shocked that it still had blood on their hands and associated her image with blood on their hands, or Thomas McFarlan with blood on their hands, because I don't think this is right. What happened is that's a page, if I go back where she shows it, that's a page I made where I wanted to put up all the heads of Intel who have specifically attacked me, whose men have specifically shot me in the head. At this point in time, that is Andrew Parker, that is Alex Younger, that is Dr. Bruno Karl, that is Gerhard Schindler, and that is, what was his face? Markus Seidler here in Switzerland, and the current one is Jean-Philippe Gaudin. These people's men have actually shot me in the head, not once, many times. And those are the men who are running the genocide in their respective countries, together with the secret societies. So secret services and secret societies, with a lot of contractors. Now, they were meant to go on blood on their hands, but then it became the blacklist. And the problem is, when you're editing a web page, I just go straight to the page and I forget how the web page is linked in as a subordinate web page. So from my vantage point, I was just making a page for Ramola Dharmaraj, and I tied it in with the blacklist, and I forgot what it actually said on the blacklist. So as soon as I saw this, that is a valid point, and I went and I corrected it immediately. Okay, so let me just show you what I did, and I will show you what it says now. Because that is true, that wasn't right, and that wasn't intended, because I don't think Ramola has killed anybody. But as I said, it arose out of the way I edit the webpage, and I genuinely didn't notice. Right now, I have retitled it as Attacks and Refusals of Assistance. Now, the blood background, the red, is still there because attacking people and refusing assistance will lead to people dying. They are not directly responsible, but what Ramola and Melanie are doing led to me having to work for a week where I wasn't doing my court case. So for an entire week, I was gunned in the head consistently. I incurred brain damage and bodily damage. And that's that 1 week that kept me from my court case and the emergency injunction against these killing psychopaths. And maybe I won't even make it to court before they kill me. So this has real damage, but I will leave the background, and I call this just attacks and refusals of assistance. It's not called blood on their hands anymore, because that was misleading out of historical reasons. Now, as regards the other people who are on here, I have already uploaded, and I'm going to upload the evidence that's missing for Bryan Tew, who slandered, defamed me to the entire victim community, claiming I'm not a physicist. And when I provided proof, and I had to provide the proof to Bill Binney and Kirk Wiebe, because he also slandered me to them, and I gave them my full qualifications, and I had to do it in response to this, this goofball defaming me. When I claimed that, he claimed that I never worked at CERN. So I provided evidence that I also worked at CERN. But I had to take real-life action. And then he claimed that he was in touch with a real-life CERN physicist, and the information came from him. That's what Bryan Tew claimed, and he refused to tell me who the physicist was. And I strongly believe that was a lie. Now, Todd Giffen, you can actually look at what he said, right, here. And he was saying that it makes his pussy really wet. These are his words. It makes his pussy wet. You can read the email. That I'm an Oxford CERN physicist, and that he would love to cuddle up with me in a superconducting magnet coffin. That's what he says in these emails here, which I have included. You can click on it and you can read the emails. He says, Todd Giffen, to me on the 2nd of January 2017, you're an Oxford CERN physicist that makes my pussy wet. I have some questions. Blah, 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 blah. And at some point, he's talking about the coffin. He's giving me kisses here and so on. I don't think I went public on the 6th of December 2016. Less than a month later, I was sent emails like that as a Holocaust victim from this guy who has friends in military intelligence, I don't think that's correct or that's in order. And the fact that he's got friends in military intelligence, he said himself in an email, which is why I published this. I think this guy is highly out of order, and it's frankly psychological terrorism against a Holocaust victim. This is character defamation against a Holocaust victim with no evidence and with frankly lying. And then Robert Duncan is in a class of his own because he, and I'll explain why, he first of all publicly stated that I'm in the program. I am in the program. He publicly stated that, okay? But then he contacted me and told me that my mind is too average for him to help me. You can read this in the email exchange. And then he has cartel signaling in his study. In this like fake study he has this funky poem at the end, right? Oops, sorry, that was just downloaded somehow as a document. Yeah, because it's a Word document. And if you open the Word document here, you will see that he's got a little poem saying, prick your finger, it is done. Hey, do you remember the Podestas pricking their finger? So here, at the end of a scientific, so-called scientific study, Dr. Robert Duncan included a poem that reads, prick your finger, it is done. The moon has now eclipsed the sun. The moon has eclipsed the sun. The angel has spread his wings. The time has come for better things. Now that to me is a satanic verse, and somebody told me that this is actually from, oh, what's his face? That rock star, that satanic rock star. It's Marilyn Manson, I think. That's, I think, one of his lyrics. Okay? Fucking creepy. And then this guy claims to be an Illuminati on his Facebook page. That's Robert Duncan, guys. That's Robert Duncan. Bryan Tew seems to be connected to him. And then he sent me an entire volley of abusive emails here. You can see these. This is a screenshot from my inbox. Robert Duncan emailing me here at 52 minutes past midnight, 1:43, 1:43, 1:44, 1:47, 1:48, 1:50, 1:52, 2 a.m., 2 a.m. 02, 2 a.m. 03, 2:12, 2:16, 2:25, 2:30, 2:33. And in these emails, which I've also included here, right, you can read what he said. And it also includes that he is doing experiments on psychological warfare by DARPA on me. And I said, you know, when he started spamming me, I said, excuse me, who's the owner of the spam bot? And he said, experiments on psychological warfare by DARPA. So he was basically implying his emails were experiments on psychological warfare by DARPA. I'm not making this fucked up shit up, people. This is what Dr. Robert Duncan sent me in an email from his email address. Here's my view on these people. And that's the kind of stuff I publish on here. Egregious stuff. Now, as far as Annie Kaspar goes, I haven't uploaded the documents yet because I didn't have the time, but she launched, or she threatened me with a fake court case. She alleged I had stolen intellectual property from her, whereas the only exchange I ever had with her was to hear about her case and hear about how she wants to write to the UN. That is it. That is it. I never had any dealings with her, and I requested that she remove me from her email list. But then she threatened me with actual legal action, real legal action, and I got a letter from somebody who claimed to be a lawyer, but who I strongly suspect is to be a fake lawyer, and I strongly suspect to be Annie Kaspar herself. And in that letter, I was threatened with legal action for intellectual property theft. And Annie Kaspar refused to actually explain to me what the intellectual property was that I, or even name it, that I was accused of having stolen from her. Right? Now that's the kind of fucked up shit I'm dealing with. And these are the people I want to put up here. Thomas McFarlan, you can read in great detail the timeline that he has Who is Thomas McFarlan, right? Oh, it's medium.com, exactly. He basically has less than a handful of articles on medium.com. That's all that is. This guy is not a great activist, people, a great human rights activist. No one knows who the hell he is. I had a Skype call with him because Ramola suggested I talk to him, but it came from her. I didn't know this guy. So I Skyped with him, and I know that he lives in his mom's basement, and that's it. And then he had one video where he basically used all my footage without adding anything to it. Nothing. He just played it. Okay. And then there's footage where he added stuff to it. Okay. Yeah. And that's all to do with me. And then I explain it in greater detail why this is really dodgy, and his tweets are full of character defamation against me. And I have written to him, and I have asked to retract that defamation and remove the videos, and I'm still waiting for a reply. I emailed him on the 2nd of August 2018. So these are the people, and I've decided that I'm going to pull the plug on everybody who is doing something like that against me forever, so that the public can see what these people do. And I want the public to see what Ramola does. But I'm very sorry that for a while it said Blood on Their Hands Blacklist, because frankly, I never look at the website in this format. I only ever see the website in this format and in the editing format. Okay, and here all I ever saw was Ramola Dharmaraj. So I want to make clear that I never ever said that Ramola has blood on her hands. I never ever meant to imply that. That was a genuine mistake that I have corrected as soon as I heard about that. But I strongly, strongly am behind the fact that Ramola, with what she has done, she has earned herself a place in this list that says attacks, because she has attacked me many times. So as far as I'm concerned, that has been set right now. Let's continue.
And she's stuck, choice photographs of all of us. And in my case, a screenshot, because I asked her to remove my author photograph. And that is the one request she complied with, because I told her it was copyrighted intellectual property. It belonged to me, and she could not use it to slander and defame and revile me. It's my author photograph. End of story. So she actually took it down, but she did not take down she put in its place this lovely screenshot, which makes me look like I'm contemplating something dark and, dastardly.
I'm sorry. When I put this screenshot up, this was after Ramola asked me to remove the pretty picture that we always used for her, which is fair enough. I'm totally fine with removing copyrighted images. But then I had to use a non-copyrighted image, and I took the first screenshot. Okay, I took a screenshot that showed Ramola. And I'm sorry, woman, if you're complaining and you want a pretty picture removed, don't complain that the second picture is not as pretty as the first. I'm not going to wade through, the footage from our Techno crime fighter fora, right, which are common, what's it called? A Creative Commons. So I'm allowed to use it, especially for commentary, right? I'm not going to wade through that to find the prettiest shot of you after I had a really pretty shot of you and you told me not to use that. So tough luck.
So, and then she's got my name right on top, my full name spelled out, which nobody, in the publishing world recognizes anymore, because I publish as Ramola D. And then...
What was that? Did you guys just hear what she said? Let's just listen to that again.
So, and then she's got my name right on top.
So Ramola has an issue with me having her name right on top. That is this, right? I mean, if I have to name the page after you, woman, because this is about you, you realize that, right? But her issue is not that I wrote that on. Her issue is that I wrote her full name. And now listen carefully to the reason why that's an issue.
Full name spelled out, which nobody, in the publishing world recognizes anymore, because I publish as Ramola D.
Which nobody in the publishing world recognizes anymore, because she publishes as Ramola D. She actually said that. let's just listen to this again and let's figure out what the problem with that statement is.
Spelled out, which nobody, in the publishing world recognizes anymore because I publish as Ramola D. And then...
So, excuse me, Missy, I think if I really analyze this, this is megalomania. Because are you claiming that nobody in the publishing world will recognize you if they read Ramola Dharmaraj? Really? You have so many agents in the publishing world, agent as in like literary agent, and so many publishers, so many contracts with publishers, that you have all consistently signed with Ramola D, even though it's actually a legal contract. So legal contract will have to state your name and not your artist name, right? You're telling me that you have been publishing for so long that even the publishers who would have an actual commercial contract with you would not recognize you anymore under your real name, which funnily enough is the name that would end up on the contract that they would handle if they were your publishers. Is this the point when I find out that you've actually got a screw loose, my dear child? Because a sentence like that would maybe be fair enough if you're Madonna. Because nobody in the world knows what Madonna is actually called. Maybe not even her publishers. Maybe she even signs her contracts with Madonna because everybody knows Madonna and nobody knows the actual legal name behind that, right? I mean, to prove my point, people, let's just look up Madonna real name. It is Madonna Louise Ciccone. Madonna is actually Madonna Louise Ciccone. Did you know that? I sure as hell didn't. I sure as hell didn't. But I think everybody knows Madonna. Or Prince. I think everybody knows Prince. Well, that's the artist formerly known as Prince, because Prince these days is known by a symbol. And to prove to you that I'm not making that up, Prince, the artist formerly known as Prince Rogers Nelson. Did you know that Prince's real name was Prince Rogers Nelson? Because everybody, right, just knows him as Prince. And I don't know what his symbol is these days. Because these days, I think right now, this is the unpronounceable symbol, later dubbed the love symbol. But this symbol is now, I think, the legal representation of the artist formerly known as Prince, otherwise known as Prince Rogers Nelson, formerly. Now, my dear Ramola, if you are Prince, or if you are Madonna, I can just about believe that nobody will recognize you, right? If you write literally Louise Ciccone, people are like, who the fuck are that? You know, who the fuck is that? And if somebody says, oh, that's Madonna, people would go, oh, that's Madonna, right? Or Prince, Rogers Nelson, who the fuck is that? That's Prince. Oh my God, that's Prince? It works like that, Ramola. But if you are telling me, if you are genuinely telling me that none of your publishers will ever recognize Ramola Dharmaraj, I think you are deluded. I think these are delusions of grandeur. And I think that is actually a real psychiatric thing. But I couldn't believe that she just said that. I mean, just look at this.
You look like I'm contemplating something dark and, dastardly. So, and then she's got my name right on top, my full name spelled out, which nobody, in the publishing world recognizes anymore because I publish as Ramola D. And then she's got a header titled famously Timeline of Ramola's Defamation Campaign. And what I want to say before we go back to you, Melanie, is simply that this is a very clever way of running a defamation campaign on me and naming it with my name and daring to say this is my defamation campaign.
Really? This is a really clever way? When a woman is calling your colleague with whom you're collaborating on an international project between Belgium and Switzerland, when this woman is calling your colleague daily and says that you're an intelligence agent, if this woman is then also publishing articles about you saying that you are engaging in neurolinguistic programming and that you are paid to malign and does all these things, is it really something clever to publish a website and just document that in a timeline? And then to entitle the page with the name of the woman who's doing this? This is, I mean, seriously, guys, I'm now asking everybody here, okay? Is this something specifically clever to do? Have I missed a trick here? Because for me, that is something I would do for a legal case. When I really see that this woman is on a rampage and is trying to destroy all of my other work projects after she has kicked me out of Techno, after the joint investigation team has broken up as a result, she's now going after my other project, which is my scanning project here in Europe at a Belgian university with a human rights charity. When you see a woman do that, is that a clever thing to do, that you just say, it's this woman and this is the timeline of what happened and this is what I have an issue with? That is now an allegation against me as something sinister? Really? Or are we actually dealing with somebody who's very skilled at turning around what they are doing in actual fact? This is something Ramola did. All these articles published, they appeared on Ramola's page. You can look at all the videos she republished on her page, tot up the numbers, and see if my do's and don'ts comes close to the 4-hour video that they put out that I now have to reply to, right? And to all the other videos that she has published on her page, which were all about me. Have I published anything about Ramola before the 12th of November? I didn't. Before the 12th of November, there was nothing about Ramola Dharmaraj on my website, but there was a lot of articles and standing notices and public notices and this and that about me on her page. And you can look at the exact sequence of what was on her page before the 12th of November. That's why I made the timeline, so that afterwards we can reconstruct who did what when and what was a response to what. I mean, it's extraordinary. It's extraordinary of what this woman is producing here and what she's claiming and has absolutely no evidence for, or is an
So I just wanted to make that point because I'm making it in my own writing. And, you know, I will return to that subject at a later point. But in the course of this long story over here she set up, you have been mentioned and things that you have said and done have been mentioned. And then what else has she done? She's attributed certain slanderous remarks to you. And, you know, she's taken off on me and my work as well. So I will certainly be addressing that shortly. So coming back to you.
Yeah, and we will come to all this, and we will see by the end of this broadcast, we will see totally through her lies, and we'll have the entire truth.
So there's another allegation. Melanie says, and I will hold her to this, by the end of this broadcast, we will see totally through her lies and we will have the entire truth. So Melanie, without providing any evidence right here, has already alleged that I lied. And not just once, she talks plural, lies. She says, by the end of this broadcast, we will see totally through her lies and we will have the entire truth. Now, that's funny, Melanie, because in this broadcast, you're not showing any evidence. Meanwhile, on my website, I have uploaded real-life evidence that is uncontested. So, okay. But I'm holding Melanie to this. And this is why I have to go through these entire fucking 2.5 hours of boomf, because I need to prove that I haven't lied, because these are the allegations that are made against me.
As I said, I've long hesitated to do this broadcast, as normally I'm not for washing dirty laundry in public. This is generally my stance. when it comes to disagreements within the community. However, in the light of the recent outrageous lies and slanders and outrageous accusations by Katherine Horton, I've decided to reply to all of these slanderous accusations one by one and just prove them wrong with facts. After that, I suppose that everything will be clear.
So let's just pause here. What Melanie is alleging is that she said, in the light of the recent outrageous lies and slanders and outrageous accusations by Katherine Horton. Now, when you hear this, you have to hold these women to their word and say, you prove to me exactly what the outrageous lies and slanders were by pointing to the exact passage where Katherine Horton has made that outrageous lie and that outrageous slander. And you have to point to these outrageous accusations so that we can look at it if those accusations are actually outrageous and if they were accusations to start with. You actually have to do that type of work, Melanie. You can't just blither on and make some random remarks. You actually have to point to the precise evidence, pretty much like I'm doing now. I am pointing to the precise words that you're using that I have an issue with because they invite the reader, or sorry, the listener, to believe that I've put something out that was outrageous and contained lies and slanders and accusations that are false, which I have not. And oh, by the way, I just looked at my notes. One of the things I would like to give you the heads up about is that they are referring to my video do's and don'ts, but instead of going back to that and pointing to evidence from that video, what these women will do is they will come up with a new set of accusations against me, a new set that was not in the previous allegations. Watch it carefully because I will go through every single new accusation.
I will not speak about Katherine Horton anymore in public.
So she claims that after this, she will not speak about Katherine Horton anymore in public. Okay, hear that again.
After that, I suppose that everything will be clear. And I will not speak about Katherine Horton anymore in public. As I have turned the page, and we really have a lot to do as an association, where growth plans for an international association are just carried out as we speak.
Okay, so this is the promise, and I was really pleased to hear that from Melanie. So she says, after this broadcast, which I knew was only 2.5 hours long, she said everything will be clear and she will not speak about Katherine Horton anymore in public as she will have turned the page, and she has a lot to do as an association that she's running. She means Ikator, her human rights charity. Funnily enough, that turns out to be a lie because she says this on the 2nd of December 2018. And then, less than 2 weeks later, on the 15th December 2018, she goes live with Ramola for another 1.5 hours, entirely dedicated to Katherine Horton. So, do you see the bollocks that's coming out of these women's mouth here? They do not really want to put a line under this. They want to keep going. They want to keep going because it's just so much fun, and they actually think that they are getting traction with this. If a woman says this, that she's really busy, after a 2.5 hour video dedicated to attacking somebody, who on earth goes live a 1.5 weeks later for another 1.5 hours, when in the meantime, the woman hasn't even opened her mouth publicly? I haven't said a word publicly about this between the 2nd of December and the 15th of December. And besides, I ask you, where in the community have you ever seen 2 people go live for 4 hours dedicated to ripping one person to shreds? Has any of you or any of these women ever gone online for 4 hours to rip the heads of Intel to shreds? Because I've done that. I can point to my very early videos, which were entirely dedicated to ripping the MI6 to shreds. I have talked 4 hours just about the heads of MI6. I have done that, but these women haven't. These women don't attack the real heads of intel. These women attack me with no evidence. And this is what I find highly unethical. If you want to gang up with people, to rip somebody to shreds, make that the head of intel or a general of the military. You go, or head of the FBI. You rip them to shreds for 4 hours. I will actually pay to watch that. But not another victim. Not another victim. And by the way, Melanie has access to my body scans. She knows that the first scanning we did in Brussels clearly showed my body emitting between 400 and 500 megahertz. She knows that I've got chips. In fact, she found my chips in my neck, her own good self. And she told me that I've got scars on my forehead. She spotted them. She spotted them. Melanie knows I'm a victim. And in this broadcast and in the other one that followed this one, she will proceed to call me an intelligence agent. Now that's lying, and this woman knows she's lying. So watch for this, please. And now, ladies and gentlemen, these people complained about my videos' do's and don'ts, and now they will start leveling the first accusations against me. Now, these are the points that they actually have against me. And I will tell you that it has nothing to do with my do's and don'ts. These are all new points. So let's listen. This is now point number 1.
The first comment I want to make is about Katherine claiming she was so shocked and upset, as your assessment of her activities and her behavior was that she is an agent. And I believe you have said probably even a double agent.
So the very first accusation leveled against me is that so Melanie said, the first comment I want to make is about Katherine claiming she was so shocked and upset as your assessment of her activities and her behavior was that she's an agent. And I believe you have said probably even a double agent. So Melanie's problem is that I'm upset being called an agent. And this is despite the fact that Melanie has spotted the scars, the laser surgery scars on my forehead herself. She has measured the chips in my neck and the back of my head herself. She was the woman who showed me I'm implanted. We have it on video, Melanie. How you show me, you prove to me I'm a victim who is implanted. I didn't know up to that date, and I think it was in the middle of May. We have that fucking video, Melanie. People can hear my surprise as you're showing this to me and you're proving it to me using my own bug detector. So, Melanie, you know I'm a victim. You have seen all the evidence. You have even seen the evidence from the university that you have organized. You know my body is emitting between 400 and 500 megahertz, and you have the measurement results. We have discussed them. And now you are telling me that you find it strange that I'm shocked of being called an agent. Of course I'm being shocked, Melanie, because I'm a victim, and you know that. And now Melanie says that Ramola even thinks I'm a double agent. Now listen to this again.
As your assessment of her activities and her behavior was that she is an agent. And I believe you have said probably even a double agent.
Yes, just to be clear, yes, I think my latest assessment of her, which I simply will continue to speak about, and which I certainly believe in, which I have never changed ever since I came to this conclusion and analysis and understanding, is that yes, Katherine Horton is a double agent. That is my assessment, and that is something I have shared with you. Yes.
Okay.
So this is allegation number 2, right? Or this is more Ramola's opinion. Okay, but this is allegation number 2 in the first few sentences of these women getting going. So number 1, what's so unusual is that I'm shocked being called an agent, even though Melanie knows I'm a victim. And now I just have to listen publicly to Ramola saying that she thinks I'm a double agent. Okay, now let's just to explain why I'm so shocked about all this, because this is what Melanie has an issue with. She doesn't understand why I'm so shocked. Let's just all look up the definition of a double agent. Let's just type Merriam-Webster's dictionary, okay? And let's just look up together double agent. Double agent. This is a spy pretending to serve one government while actually serving another. This is the dictionary definition of a double agent. So, I am said to be a spy pretending to serve one government while actually serving another government. Now, if anybody accuses me of being a double agent, or let's start with this. If anybody accuses me of being an agent, they please state which country they think I'm working for. Or maybe they state that they just generally think I'm working for some government, but they can't really pin it down, which would be understandable, because frankly, I lost track a long time ago if I'm stalked by MI6, by the fucking CIA, by the Swiss intel agencies, or the German BND. Frankly, I think by now I'm stalked and surveyed by all of them, because I'm about to pick a fight with all of them, and they each want to cover their asses. So my everyday, I have so many gang stalkers people that I have lost track. I understand that they all share gang stalking agreements with each other, but I'm a fairly big fish and I really pissed off a lot of people. And after all, I was stalked by the Supreme Court Judge Lord Sumption. So my case goes right to the top. And this is why every agency wants to cover their asses independently. I tell you people, by now, I have lost track who is who. Unless they come with a bowler hat and an umbrella and drink tea with milk and say things like blimey and oh my, I will not recognize them as an MI6 agent. So I understand that it can be difficult spotting which government a certain person works for. I totally understand that. However, when you claim that somebody is a double agent, you very specifically state that you have identified that they're working for two entities, for two governments. Now, when you state that you have distinguished that, you need to be able to name at least one of them. Because you need to say, well, this person works for or pretends to work for that government, but actually I've got evidence or reason to believe that they work for yet another. Do you understand? I'm not ranting and raving here. I'm just trying to get across the concept of a double agent. And I'm trying to explain how fucking idiotic it is for somebody to claim that so-and-so is a double agent without being able to name one country, let alone two. Do you understand the simple concept? Let's just do this together so that everybody, and also Ramola, who will listen to this eventually, understands this. If you claim that I'm an agent, you can get away with not being able to specify which country I work for, because it's hard to distinguish, as I just explained. So saying you're an agent and then not being able to say if that's CIA, NSA, GCHQ kind of thing, they're all really the same. CIA, MI6, can you tell the difference? So that's okay. You can do that if you really wanted to. But if you say somebody is a double agent, you imply that you have detected that they don't even work for the government that you thought they work for yet another one. So it means you need to have identified at least the one government that you thought they worked for, because you need to be able to distinguish that they work for yet another party. So you do understand, this is a subtle point here, but if you say a double agent, you need to be able to as opposed to agent, you need to somehow distinguish the difference. And to be able to distinguish the difference, you need to have identified at least one. Do you understand this? Are people following me on this? Yeah? If you say somebody's an agent, it's okay not to be able to say which exact government. You just know that they work for some government, okay? We all probably got to the point where we've at least identified one person who probably covertly worked for the government doing bullshit, okay? If you identified gang stalkers, you identified them as agents. You have done well. You've passed that bar, and you can rightfully say that in your view, these people are agents, or you call them intelligence officers, or you call them something contractors, but they work for the government. Well done. Now, if you say, I think that gang stalker or that saboteur or that so-and-so is a double agent, you need to have moved beyond having identified that they work for government, and you need to have enough discernment in your data or your perception or your evidence that they don't even work for that one they ostensibly work for, they work for yet another one. So you need to have identified the government that they originally pretended to work for. Do you understand that? Do you fucking understand that? So identifying singular agent, it's okay not to be able to name the government. In identifying double agent, plural, it's okay not to be able to identify the second government, but you need to have identified the first to be able to tell apart that this person works for another entity apart from the one entity that you identified them to work for. Does that get into people's heads? Okay, we've all mastered this now, right? Yes, 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 thumbs up. Okay, now let's get back to it. If Ramola claims I'm a double agent, she needs to identify at least one government that she says that I work for, because she claims to have the discernment that I don't even work for that government, but yet another on top of that, which makes me a double agent as opposed to an agent. Okay, we're all with that. Okay, also the people who are not in counterintelligence can follow me. Yes. Okay, now what this means is that as soon as Ramola says, and I've got her precise words here, you know, she said, yes, I've got the transcript. Yes, to be clear, yes, I think my latest assessment of her, which I simply will continue to speak about, and which I certainly believe in, which I have never changed ever since I came to this conclusion. So it looks like a firmly reached conclusion. So I never changed ever since I came to this conclusion and analysis and understanding, is that, yes, Katherine Horton is a double agent. That is my assessment, and that is something I have shared with you. Yes, I agree. Pretty clear, no? Okay, great. Now, Ramola, please name at least one government out of the two you need to name, or one is enough, one and one unknown, but you need to name at least one government that I work for, and you need to know that government because, you know, as I just explained, you claim to have the discernment that I don't even really work for that one, but for another possibly shadowy entity on top of that government. So which government, Ramola, would that be that I work for? Which intelligence agency do I possibly work for, my dear, given that I have sued British intelligence, I have sued MI5, MI6, and GCHQ, and these are the only publicly known intelligence agencies in Britain, right? And there's military intelligence in Britain, which is military intelligence, MI 5 and 6, and they have a civilian section as well. So they are kind of British intelligence. I'm sure that they also have shadowy organizations, right? Like the BND has DVD, but frankly, that's the only thing that the public knows about, and that really matters. So let's just clump them all as British intelligence. Do I work for British intelligence, whom I've just sued in 2016, or do I work for German intelligence, who I am about to sue, and about whom I've revealed that they train children to gang stalk? I've seen that with my own eyes. I revealed that they shoot innocent women on their own rooftop terrace and in their own flats. I revealed that German intelligence, I suspect together with British intelligence, murdered 2 of my grandparents in Germany. Do I work for German intelligence, Ramola, when I just said that German intelligence murdered my grandparents and I'm about to sue the fuckers for it. Do you really think I work for German intelligence when I blow that publicly open and I talk about DVD and how I really think that there's some fight between DVD and BND because I saw some helicopters, and really fucking big ones, and a lot of them, hover over the BND territory, and apparently very much looked like they were shooting people to shits with direct energy weapons through a nightly campaign running between 1 a.m. and 3 a.m. I think, if I remember correctly, or 2 a.m. and 3 a.m., something thereabouts. Do you really think I work for German intelligence and I would be blurting this stuff out? And also drawing, attention to the fact that German intelligence has got a training round running through Kalkreuzstraße and Goldbergstraße to the Munich Zolln U-Bahn Haltestelle or S-Bahn train station, linking up to the main Wolfratshauser Straße. They train their agents there. Do you think if I were an agent of the BND, I would publicly state the streets where they train their recruits? Do you think I would do that? Or do you think that's more a symptom of somebody who's a victim, who's been stalked by these fuckers and whose rat lines were running past her flat? I watched these kiddies being trained several times per year. I had 2 guys speaking Italian for 4 hours or 6 hours straight in front of my flat several times per year while these trainee grunts were running past, looking utterly clueless. Do you think somebody working for the German BND would reveal these sort of things? Or is it more the sign of somebody who's never signed an official Secrets Act and any sort of non-disclosure agreement in her life? Right? So I would argue German intelligence is out, and I grew up in Germany. British intelligence is out because I sued the motherfuckers, or tried to, right? So I probably also don't work for them, right? Now, these 2 are out. These are pretty big ones. Do you think I work for Swiss intelligence? Now that I have filmed how Swiss intelligence is gunning me to shits, and I have sent you transcripts and all my colleagues' transcripts about me walking into the headquarters of the intelligence agency of Switzerland in Bern and actually telling a guy that there's a genocide going on, and then mocking the fact that this guy was so fucking stupid he blew absolutely everything. Do you think somebody working for Swiss Intel would go interrogate their own people and then mock their own people too? People who previously worked for the NSA? Do you think somebody working for Swiss Intel would do that? Do you think somebody would be hired by Swiss Intel when they're not Swiss, when they've just moved to this country in 2015? Do you think that I work for Swiss Intel? Or do you think I work for Hungarian Intel? Whereas I never ever lived in mainland Hungary. I just speak Hungarian. I've just realized that the audio recording has really stalled as soon as I started ripping into these intelligence agencies. But let's just go through it. Do you think I work for Hungarian Intel when I've never ever lived in mainland Hungary? I'm part of the Hungarian minority that was born outside Hungary in Transylvania. I didn't stay in Transylvania very long because I grew up in Germany. And then I fled back to Hungary, hoping, that was just in 2018, in spring 2018, hoping that because I'm Hungarian, I'm ethnic Hungarian, I would find refuge in Hungary, but just to find out that Hungarian counterintelligence and Hungarian domestic intelligence gunned me to bits in Hungary. And do you think I would then write a letter to the Prime Minister, write a letter to the counterintelligence or the domestic intelligence department, and then, which is something I'm about to do, quote that dumb as fuck letter from the Hungarian domestic intel and totally humiliate these fuckers for what a bunch of retarded morons they are? Do you think this is something somebody would do who works for Hungarian intel? I can see that my image is stalling. I can see how every intel agency is now logging in and watching the stream. Now, this is, so I'm clearly not working for Hungarian intel. So do you think I work for Romanian intel, for the formerly known as the Securitate? Do you really think that somebody whose parents were dissidents didn't want to be snitches, didn't want to humiliate people or, sponge on people in communist times, where my family really could have risen had they ever engaged? Instead, I can prove I come from a lineage of people who refuse to get into the sort of stuff. I can prove it, Ramola, because there are files on us by the Romanian Secret Service. They kept files on us because we refused to be part of them. And these files are now public, Ramola. I can prove that I come from such a family. So do you think after my family has refused to collaborate, cooperate, or be snitches with the Romanian Securitate, do you think I would end up working for the Romanian Securitate when we have fled Romania? I grew up in Germany. I studied at Oxford. I sued British Intel. I am about to sue German Intel and Swiss Intel and Hungarian Intel. I'm an ethnic Hungarian. Do you think that after all this, after the Romanians were the most brutal Secret Service, and after they are the reason why I fled Romania and my family fled Romania, do you think I would go back to work for them? Do you genuinely think I would work for the Securitate? Because I don't think the Securitate would have me. They would probably suspect I am applying because I want to bust their fucking asses from the inside, which fair enough would be true. That if I ever applied to them, that's exactly what I would want to do, to take vengeance on the murder of my other grandfather, who I strongly suspect the Romanian Securitate killed with a direct LNG weapon in the 1970s. Yeah. If the Securitate ever lets me get close to them, I will try to destroy them. So, Ramola, it very much seems to me like you don't have a fucking clue about the situation in Europe. So, clearly, I'm not working for the Romanian Secret Service, and Romania is where I was born. Clearly, I do not work for the Hungarian Secret Service, and I'm an ethnic Hungarian, and I speak Hungarian at home. So, clearly, I do not work for the German Secret Services, even though I grew up in Germany. And I lived in Munich, just a stone throw away from the Bundesnachrichtendienst. Literally. They trained their little fucktards in front of my house. Yet I cannot really work for German Intel, can I? Now, I also cannot work for British Intel, and I spend most of my working life in Britain working for the University of Oxford. So I'm not working for them either. So who the fuck is left? Do you think I'm working for the CIA or American Intel? Because who else is operating in Europe? It's the Americans, right? Well, I probably am not working for the Americans if the British, the Germans, the Hungarians, and the Romanians all have shot me to bits, including the Swiss. Hang on, the Russians. Do you think I work for the Russians? Don't you think that if I had any connections to Russia with the gunning that I'm going through, don't you think I would be on a flight straight to Moscow? Given that Russia is exactly where Susie Dawson fled to escape the gunning of the Five Eyes crime syndicate and the terrorism of the Five Eyes crime syndicate. Don't you think I would already be in Russia, given all the evidence I have of the gunning, if I worked for Russian intel? So who else? Oh, the Chinese. Okay, the Chinese. Like, what? Do you really think I work for Chinese intel? I mean, that is ludicrous. I don't even speak Chinese. I never had any connection to the Chinese. And I can swear I've never worked for Chinese intel, and I never will. So, you have to take that on trust, because, yeah. So who else is left? Other European intelligence agencies, why would they hire me? And why would they hire me to pick a fight with the British intelligence agency, the Americans, the Germans, the Swiss, the Hungarians, and the Romanians? Why would, say, the French? Because, hey, that's true. I lived in France for a year and a half when I was working at CERN. But I'm about to make public that the French implanted me in my lip and in my genitals and my urinary tract. That's what I'm going to make public. While I worked at CERN, they implanted my lip. They did a near lethal field test with synthetic telepathy on me. You know, they implanted my genitals, and they also gave me a mystery disease whereby my tear ducts and my saliva dried up for 10 months. Doctors couldn't figure out what it was, and the illness disappeared as quickly as it came. I'm pretty sure it was to do with the chips and the synthetic telepathy remote control. So I am also not working for the French. And let's remember that I picked a fight with the French Secret Services helping Frédéric Laroche, or trying to help Frédéric Laroche, right? Before you, you know, got in there. And I already made public that I allege that the French Secret Service smashed into my car when I came back from Brussels on the 1 hour and a half when I was traveling, you know, wrongfully. I should have gone the long way around towards Karlsruhe and then down the German motorway, but I just did a shortcut through France. And during that shortcut that lasted an hour and a half, a French car smashed into my car from behind, right? And smashed up my grandfather's car. Right? Do you think that I work for French intelligence? Okay, so the Frenchies are clearly out, right? Because I really went up against them in court as an expert witness. So who the fuck is left, Ramola? And the Americans, I'm bleating about what the NSA, the criminality of the NSA. I revealed that the FBI is a global organized crime cartel, not a federal police service, as most people think. It's a global organized crime cartel. I made that public on Techno. Do you think I work for the Americans, Ramola? Oh, hang on. There's one, you know, there's one intelligence agency left, Mossad. I could work for the Israelis, right? But then again, let's think about this. You know, many people, I think also Ramola, think that there's some Jewish conspiracy behind the New World Order. Do you think Mossad would hire me to then pick a fight with MI6, who apparently in the conspiracies they control, which probably is fact, right? But then again, who controls whom is a splitting of hairs there. But, you know, would Mossad hire me to pick a fight with MI6 and the NSA, CIA, and the FBI, and the BND, and the NDB, and whatever the fuck Hungarian intel is called, and, you know, whatever the Secretariat calls themselves these days? Do you really think Mossad would hire somebody like me to really fuck over the the European intelligence agencies and the Americans? Really? So you have to name one, Ramola. You have to name one. If I'm a double agent, you have to name one. Which one is it going to be? You know, that's what people should ask. As soon as Ramola, as she put it, she has reached a conclusion. I came to this conclusion and analysis and understanding. Hey, it's not just a conclusion. She came to this conclusion and analysis and understanding that Katherine Horton is a double agent. Fuck me. So with double agent, you need to name at least one government, as I explained, because you need to have discerned that I don't even work for them, but then a shadowy entity. So for example, you can claim, for example, that I work for Mossad, and then I'm a double agent to, I don't know what, the deep state or the shadow world government, and I'm not even working for Mossad. Okay, well, that kind of works. But then again, this whole Mossad thing, if I had to put my money anywhere, I would guess that Ramola says Mossad. And I'll explain why. It's because when we were running Techno, at some point, she started talking to Eric Karlstrom, okay, in detail. And then she interviewed Eric Karlstrom, and Eric Karlstrom has this, you know, he's really after the Zionists, and he talks about Zionist conspiracies. Now, the difference between Eric Karlstrom and me is that I know about the Zionists. I know that Zionists are involved, but I'm trying to run this as a global transition into a better system. And I know that, for example, the Japanese mafia is not circumcised. So to go on about the Zionists only gets you so far, because you then ignore the Chinese mafia, which is vast, and the Japanese mafia, which is powerful, and all the other mafias like the Italian mafia, which is also not circumcised. And hey, you know, the black nobility, they are, you know, more Italian than they're Jewish. So, you know, at some point, the Zionist concept is going to narrow you down. It's not because I don't know about the Zionists or don't think that they're involved. I also know that the Zionists have nothing to do with the Jewish people, right? Some of the Zionists are not even Jewish. So I know all that. But I do not go on about the Zionists because I think it just narrows the mind. That's why I go on about the global organized crime cartel, because it will include people who are not circumcised. Okay? So this is my stance. Now, Ramola started talking with Eric Kallstrom, and I think she thought it strange that I never mentioned the Zionists. I on purpose don't mention the Zionists because I want people to expand their minds beyond the Zionists and realize that we are talking about a global conspiracy, a really global conspiracy. So the Zionists is going to narrow your focus. You might miss the entire black nobility, okay? So that's why I don't talk about it. Now, I think Ramola found it strange. So this is how it came about, I believe, that at some point we were live on the show and Ramola literally asked me live on the show without any further, private communication about this. She asked me, "Are you Jewish, Katherine?" In pretty much this tone. In a kind of like provocative, "Are you Jewish, Katherine?" And then really looked at my response. The answer is, "No, Ramola, I am not Jewish." And I can prove it because probably unbeknownst to you, Ramola, some people here in Europe, they have pedigrees. They have sometimes lineages that go back hundreds of years, and sometimes those lineages are known. Now, especially the people who were really fucked by the Securitate, some of those people were aristocratic. And those aristocratic families knew who did it with whom and who came out of whom going back a very long time. Right? And I just happen to be, the offspring of some of those people who really know who was who in their lineage. And I can tell you who was who in my family going back to pretty much, I think, the middle of the 14th century. Right? And this is all information that's somewhere in bank safes, and I've seen that sort of information. I was informed who I was, but we don't have any Jewish people, I don't think. I don't think we have Jewish people in my lineage. However, my lineage does go back to Genghis Khan. I can tell you that much, right? And I can even prove that I've got Mongolian genetics because I had the Mongolian birthmark when I was born, all right? So I go back to the Mongolian tribes, all right? And I can prove that. I do not really go back to the Jewish tribes, and I can prove that my family has zilch to do with the Jews. You know why, Ramola? Because none of the men in my family are circumcised. And I'm pretty sure about that because we went swimming in Sweden, for example. All right? We went swimming in lakes, in Transylvania, in Sweden, in Germany, and I saw male relatives get changed, and I'm pretty sure no one is circumcised in my family. So nobody is Jewish, not even covertly Jewish. In fact, Ramola, I have never seen a circumcised man in my life. And that's not because I spent my life living in a convent. Okay? So basically, here in Europe, many people are not Jewish. And in Europe, most men, the absolute vast overwhelming majority of men, Ramola, are not circumcised. So in other words, your American husband is most likely circumcised and therefore is closer to the Jews than my family is, where nobody is circumcised. And then people can think about why exactly it came about that the Americans are mostly circumcised. Think about that. Really think about that, people, because now that we're on this topic of who's Jewish and who's not Jewish and how you can tell, right? I want to put this point across. Very important. Think about it. How does it come about that most of the Americans are circumcised? How does it come about? Because frankly, right, if I ever ask Americans, why do you circumcise baby boys? I immediately get the response, oh, it's because of hygiene. And the answer is so immediate. For me, it immediately implies brainwash, like, for hygiene. I'm sorry. I grew up with men who, none of whom were circumcised. Nobody I ever was with, or I ever met, or I ever saw was circumcised. I have never seen a circumcised man in my life. How the fuck can it be that here in Europe, men do just fine with regards to hygiene, and in America, it's such a big problem, you need to really cut the piece of their dick off? How exactly does this come about? And does nobody find it strange that that's exactly a tradition that's done in Jewish cultures? Nobody find that even remotely strange? Because, I mean, let's put it like this, right? I have heard a lot of complaints about men from, you know, female friends and wives and relatives who were married, and, you know, distant friends and distant relatives who were married. I have, in my life, I have heard up and down a lot about embarrassing details about men as complaints from women. But issues with hygiene were not mentioned once. And I promise you that was not because of any, you know, tact or piety towards these men. Okay, I have heard everything else in greatest detail, but I don't think hygiene was ever a problem, because the people who spoke to me would have mentioned it if it had been that big a deal that you actually need to, you know, cut a piece of his knob off. So honestly, I think this is bullcrap. You know, I typically, what I hear about, you know, complaints about men are, oh, he never takes the trash out, he watches too much football, he drinks too much beer, he sleeps around. That I get a lot. But he, you know, he's got a real issue with hygiene, and I don't know how to put it, but I really think it's his foreskin. I just wish he wouldn't have a foreskin. I have never heard that once, like ever. Okay. I don't think men have an issue with hygiene down there, because after all, they hold that piece in their hand, you know, sometimes several times per day. I don't think that's an issue. So in other words, there must be something to do with the Jewish connection, and maybe, just maybe, with, you know, certain people taking over the US, enslaving the US, and then like they enslaved the Jews, and then kind of as an insider joke, especially if they were, let's say, a sex and a death cult, you know, let's just make this random hypothesis. If they were death and a sex cult, and they had, you know, secretly infiltrated and subjugated the US, would they possibly run it as an inside joke to brainwash the Americans into thinking they need to cut a piece of their dicks off? Because I might just, I mean, I've seen so much crazy shit, I might just see that happen. In that case, all these men would go through a Jewish ritual and would actually be kind of Jewish. They would have been Jewified. And in that circumstance, Ramola's husband is more Jewish than any of the men in my family. So it means it's quite rich from Ramola to ask this question. And the reason why it's rich is because, number one, I wish I could find this episode. There were 71 episodes, so I really, of 2 hours length. So there are 140 hours of footage to go through. Anybody who remembers, anybody with a photographic memory who remembers, or, you know, maybe an audio version of the photographic memory, who remembers when Ramola asked me that question and find that, it will be, you know, 10 points for Gryffindor. But, you know, asking me live on the show, when you are dealing with a European, when Europe, you know, at least this is what it's claimed, and actually there's evidence that this is also what happened, people of Jewish descent and other people have been hounded and murdered. And I'm pretty sure that that happened because there are still Jewish people, for example, in Hamburg, you know, who have spoken to me, who've talked about their relatives being carted off and being murdered. You know, so that happened. That is a thing. Okay, there might have been other stuff going on It might have been that Auschwitz particularly was really enriching uranium, as some people indicate. That's true, but it's also a fact that Jewish people were murdered. So with all this, asking a European, publicly putting her on the spot and asking her to reveal herself, if she's Jewish or not. If she were Jewish, which I'm thankfully not, it would have really put me on the spot and possibly put my life into danger. After all, we're dealing with the Nazi extermination program. So that was a really, really stupid thing to do. And Ramola did that. So from that, I suspected that she suspects that I am Jewish and perhaps secretly am working for Mossad. So if I had to guess, perhaps she thinks I'm a double agent and the one government she can name is Israel, and she thinks I'm working for Mossad. That's the only thing I can think of. So that's the only thing that, well, I can't disprove unless I really dig out my pedigree, right? And I get all the men in my family going back several lineages to say, could you please, can I just take a, I'm sorry, I'm not going to send it over text and WhatsApp like most people do. This is for evidence. I can't do that, right? So anyway, but, you know, there are ways I can prove who I am. So I am not Jewish. And hence, I don't think Mossad would hire me, really. And I don't think Mossad would hire me to kick off quite the biggest stink as I kick off, okay? So it's pretty clear I'm not working for any intelligence agency precisely because of the amount of stink I'm kicking off and precisely because of the people who I'm about to sue, okay? So anybody who thinks about this for 5 minutes will figure this out. But apparently, Ramola really thought about it and came to a conclusion and analysis and understanding that I'm a double agent. And this is the point when I have to say, you, my dear child, are an imbecile. You really are an imbecile. And I don't know how to put that nicely, but you are. Double agent, okay? Remember this, a spy pretending to serve one government while actually serving another. So now you've understood this. Now you can again maybe go back and laugh with me at these accusations.
I came to this conclusion and analysis.
Hang on, there she is saying it again.
Assessment of her, which I simply will continue to speak about, and which I certainly believe in, which I have never changed ever since I came to this conclusion and analysis and understanding, is that yes, Katherine Horton is a double agent. That is my assessment, and that is something I have shared with you. Yes.
Okay. Well, that is pretty laughable, as Katherine has the habit of calling everybody an agent.
Well, what is pretty laughable? Can we just clarify that? What's laughable is that she's shocked, right?
Well, that she said, yeah, exactly.
Hang on. So what is laughable is that Katherine is shocked. Well, frankly, Ramola, because I've got a brain and I can actually do analysis and reach conclusions and reach an understanding, I am frankly shocked that you claim that I'm a double agent, because it's one of the most moronic things that you can possibly claim about me. Really.
Has the habit of calling everybody an agent.
Well, what is pretty laughable? Can we just clarify that? What's laughable is that she's shocked, right?
Well, that she said, yeah, exactly. That she's
shocked that I said it.
That your assessment of her was that she was an agent. I found that personally pretty laughable, as Katherine has the habit of calling everybody an agent. Any victim or any people, like even our microwave weapons experts or myself, my family, were agents at one point, according to her.
Hang on a second. So this is now the allegation. So alongside the double agent allegation, alongside the allegation that is, you know, out of order, that I'm shocked being called an agent and a double agent, the third accusation is now that I have a habit of calling everybody an agent, okay? Right. Well, many victims develop that sort of habit, frankly, because you do meet so many agents. So when you've got a Holocaust victim, it's kind of like understandable. It's a bit like when you had the Jews or whoever was in the concentration camps, which definitely existed, and whoever was murdered, developing a suspicion that everybody's a Nazi. It's a bit like that, okay? So when you're being murdered, you think that everybody might be a Nazi. You have these suspicions. So when you're being, you know, gunned to bits 24/7, stalked, and you've been implanted and you're being raped and tortured with implants by the intelligence agencies, you might just perhaps be overly suspicious and think that, you know, many people are agents or could be agents. All right, so much about that. I don't think that's out of the order, because every single Holocaust victim has this habit of getting suspicious and starting to suspect family members, friends, and actually just doing this kind of consideration that if you weren't a Holocaust victim, you would never do. And I think that is natural. That's why everybody does it. It's because it's natural, okay? But that aside, Melanie lists specific people who she accuses me of having called an agent. She says any victim or any people, like even our microwave weapons expert or myself, my family, were agents at one point, according to her. That is a lie, okay? Let's hear that again, the list.
Or any people, like even our microwave weapons experts or myself, my family, were agents at one point, according to her.
Okay. Now, my question is, why on earth do you claim, Melanie, that your family were agents in my eyes at some point? Why on earth do you claim that when I really supported your father, right? Why do you think I've never said your father is an agent? I have never, ever said that. Your family, who else? You know, your mother passed away, so I don't know anything about her. You have your former partner, Melanie, right? And we discussed your former partner and your former partner's family. And all I did is I raised a couple of questions because I wanted to understand your situation. I did not say your partner is an agent, did I? What I said is, well, you seem to be implanted with a freaking strangulator and a bunch of other body implants. Now let's just think who could have possibly set you on a list. And we had a discussion. I had a discussion with Melanie where we went through possibly everybody who could have possibly got on the list. And this is what she's referring to. But I've never said her father was an agent or that her partner was an agent, because I don't believe that. I don't believe her father is an agent or her former partner is an agent. I also don't believe that the microwave weapons expert is an agent, even though he worked in covert policing. So what I did when I talked to Melanie is I said, do we really know who this guy is? And then I actually met the guy, and what I am really founding everything on is the physics. Is this guy who's a microwave weapons expert, is his science up to scratch? And it was. And as soon as I met the guy, I said to Melanie, you know what, this person, I think he's really good. And that's what I kept saying to Melanie. I said, you know, I think this guy is really good. Which is not too surprising because he's a court expert in France and Belgium. And he's an advisor to the government. He is actually really good. But I think he's also a genuinely really good guy. So that's what I said. And as Melanie knows, I even spent an entire afternoon with this guy with my broken French, which is truly atrocious. My French is shit, okay? Nevertheless, I spent an entire afternoon listening to him in French, kind of me trying to talk to him in French and in broken English. And, you know, I said, he's really good. So where the hell does this accusation come from, right? I really liked his scientific approach. I said, it's up to scratch totally. And I'm totally behind this guy. And what he says is right on the money. So I never said that, Melanie. So please take that back.
All the victims she ever met here at Ikato events, or any person she met even on the street here in Belgium, was an agent.
Okay, let's recap. Melanie is now making the accusation that all the victims I've ever met there at Ikato events, or any person she said, any person she met even on the street here in Belgium was an agent. Now that's a really thick allegation. Do you know what this allegation goes back to? I think you might just laugh when you hear it, okay? What this allegation goes back to, this allegation about any person she met even on the street here in Belgium was an agent. What that goes back to is after this entire incident at Hospital Erasmus, where, you know, Melanie's daughter was kidnapped and still hasn't been returned to this day. So pretty big fucked up intel operation, okay? After Melanie came out of psychiatry after that court case. She was only released the next day. I don't know why you can't be released immediately, right? But she could only be released the next day, which I also think is sadistic torture by this fucked up pseudo scientific hospital, so-called Erasmus, which I actually think is a covert intel front. Now, after Melanie was released the next day after her court case, okay, we drove home. And then when we arrived home, I said to her, okay, Melanie, you're now back. I picked her up in the morning and I said, okay, I'm going to go out and let's just get some breakfast. This is the first time you're back in your flat. You were away for a week. We didn't have time to shop. I was working on your court bundle all throughout your time. We have nothing at home. I went out and I bought breakfast. And I said to Melanie in her flat, I said, okay, I'm going to go out. I'm going to go to the boulangerie and I'm going to get us some croissants or something. And we're going to have a deluxe breakfast here. So I went out and I walked. So imagine you leave Melanie's flat after you said all this. You walk outside, you walk down the street, and then what you see is you see a guy who has been standing there as you left her flat and began walking down the street, which is exactly going towards the boulangerie. But he was standing when you came out, and then he was across a junction. So he began walking down the street. I caught up with him. And as I'm, I am wearing, boots with high heels so he can hear me come. And as he hears me walk down the street, he keeps looking over his shoulder like that as I'm approaching. And he keeps looking. And then exactly the moment as I'm going past him, he says to me, bonjour, bon appétit. Do you really think some old codger standing outside at the street corner will suddenly start walking exactly the moment I come out of the entrance door, will just so happen to walk towards the direction where you said you would be going, would be looking really oddly like gang stalker style over his shoulder repeatedly to draw attention to himself, and then on top of all this would say the sentence, bonjour, bon appétit. Now, I understand French very well to this standard to be able to tell those two sentences apart and to understand what they mean. And they mean good morning and, bon appétit, you understand, you say that as have a good appetite. You would say that to somebody who's about to go and have a meal. Now, if you're walking down a street in Belgium, who the fuck would say to you bon appétit at 11 o'clock? Who would say that? Because it's between breakfast and it's between lunch and it's on a working day. So at 11 o'clock, no person will say bon appétit to you, especially not if they don't know you. And especially not if you're just walking down and the boulangerie is around the corner, right? And it's not to be seen. It's literally an old guy who's just being overtaken by a younger woman. Would he turn around and say, bonjour, bon appétit? I don't think so. But in gang stalking world, everything made sense. The guy would be waiting there for me to come out, wait for me. He would have been plugged into the indoor surveillance, or he would have been told on his phone what to say by the people who are listening into the Melanie's flat, which we know they are listening into because they quote stuff back to us, right, and do street theater and all the stuff and know exactly when we're leaving. So, of course, in gang stalking world, all this makes sense, right? So I immediately recognized this guy to be a gang stalker, and I immediately knew he had just listened to the conversation that we had, or somebody else had listened to it and had told him what to say to do a perping, a little street theater show. So all I did is I came back and I put everything down, and I came back with all the croissants and all this sort of stuff and jam and what else I've bought at my own expense, by the way, of course, right? That will feature later, but that's fine. So I come back and I do all this, and then Melanie says, oh, how did it go? Everything fine, right? And she probably meant like, oh, was your French okay, right? And I said, yeah, it was great. I love the boulangerie. It's really nice. Well, the only thing was, as I'm going there, this guy literally said to me, bonjour and bon appétit. And at that moment, a woman who has been gang stalked for almost a decade, who had housebreaking, who had a very large number of chips implanted by Intel, who had a strangulator implanted in her throat by Intel, who has survived several assassination attempts or very close, staged car accidents by Intel, who we both went and complained about the gang stalking and the housebreaking and the directed energy weapon assaults from the neighbors about to the Attorney General together, on paper, signed, handed in at the Attorney General's office in Brussels together. This woman who was so seasoned in intel, she hit the roof. And what just because I said, oh yeah, this guy, and I was laughing. I was like, yeah, it all went fine. It was just one of these dipshits saying, yeah, bonjour and bon appetit. And she immediately hit the roof. And she said, you're just suspecting everybody. Now you'd start talking about agents. For you, everybody's an agent. I'm like, hello, your child was just kidnapped. You were locked up by these fucking agents. We were shot to bits in the hospital by these fucking agents, right? We were almost killed on the way to the scanning by these fucking agents. We had agents break into your flat. The fact that one of these guys who we know are always around us said bonjour, bon appetit is frankly the least of our problems. And of course he was an agent, but she hit the roof about the fact that I dared to identify him as an agent. And that's the moment when I thought, okay, time to go. So literally when she hit that roof over me just identifying one gang stalker who was really in my face on a side sentence, when she hit the roof, I decided, okay, I better go as quickly as possible because probably she's stressed. Probably, it's like finally she's home. All this thing about her kid is hitting her. She probably hates me for it. Okay, that's fine. I better go. And that at that point, it would have been fine. However, now, over a year later, to still bring this up and claim that I'm suspecting every person, any person I even met on the streets in Brussels is a bit much, Melanie. It's a bit rich. It's a bit rich coming from you, because remember, you contacted me claiming you have a throat implant that was implanted by agents. The tooth fairy didn't put it in. That you have a strangulator that I then analyzed for you in Switzerland, right? You and I went to the Attorney General's office and put in a complaint about this. So you have been telling me quite a lot of agent activity for you to then bring this complaint that I've just identified that one old guy in the street as a gang stalker and expand it and make it sound like I'm weird. That's a bit much. It's so utterly ludicrous. It's idiotic. Okay? But listen to her. Listen to her. She claims any person I even met in the street was an agent. Come on, Melanie. Everybody internationally knows that these gang stalkers are everywhere. Of course, we're going to find some agents. Jesus. And then it's about, any victim I've ever met at Ikator. I am sorry. This is nonsense. Okay. I went through and there were some really weird people, right? And with every single person, I said to Melanie, do you really know this person? Do you really know if this is true? Have you seen any evidence? And that was then misconstrued as, oh, yes, every single victim was an agent. No, I'm just trying to analyze and I'm trying to make sense of this world. That's all that's happening. Okay. So let's continue with this.
That includes late victim Elke Malone, who died from cancer, probably because of microwave radiation poisoning. For Katherine, she was just a B&D agent.
Okay, let's hit us that again. She says that includes late victim Elke Malone, who died from cancer, probably because of microwave radiation poisoning. For Katherine, she was just a B&D agent. That's another accusation, okay? A specific accusation I have to reply to. So let me reply in detail. Elke Malone, okay? Elke Malone is a woman who I met at the Ikator scanning, okay? So she was presented to me as one of those victims and Ikator members, and I took that on trust. What was really strange, though, is that as I was trying to scan people in Melanie's kitchen, and this is why I really remember meeting Elke for the first time, we had set up the Faraday cage I had bought in Melanie's kitchen, and it's kind of like a temporary, not really a cage, it's a mesh, okay? It's like a mesh curtain, but completely sealed. When we had set it up in Melanie's kitchen, we were trying to scan people with this bug detector, okay? Now, when I tried to scan Elke with this bug detector, and if I remember correctly, that was the meeting where the bug detector was brought by Horst Kummer, and it didn't work. So because he didn't bring a charger, okay, and the bug detector was flat. And as I say in my instructions for the Atseco bug detector, when the battery goes down, it doesn't detect anything, but doesn't tell you it doesn't detect anything. Okay, so with a detector like that, I was trying to scan victims, not knowing what I was doing because I'd never measured a chip before in my life. Okay, and as I'm doing so, this woman, Elke Malone, is telling me about all the ways she's being attacked. Now, what I found extremely strange about this woman was that Elke Malone would be telling me that she's being attacked and then would really focus on me and on my reaction. That I found very odd. Most of the time, these victims are like a waterfall, like when you turn on a tap and it just comes out because there's so many offenses committed against them. So I'm totally used to listening to this like torrent of evidence and, you know, things that have been done to people. That's normal. With Elke, she was telling me what has been done to her in a systematic way, and she kept watching me. She kept watching my reaction. Now, I just find this bizarre. So I thought that was really strange. And at some point, she also said, oh, yes, and I'm pretty sure I'm chipped. And she was, you know, pointing at her wrist. And I was trying to measure her wrist, but I couldn't measure anything because, hey, the bug detector didn't work because it wasn't charged because Horst Kummer hadn't brought the charger. At that point, when she said, oh, I'm being chipped, she said, and they also chipped my aura. And then she just looked at me and looked at my reaction. Now, for me, at that point, I decided that's so odd. She's much more likely to be an agent than she's likely to be a normal victim. So I said, you know what, Elke, I'm not really into that chipping of auras. I just measure real chips and real bodies. And then she kept going on about that, but all throughout she had she was looking at me, gauging my reaction. Now, a victim who believes that you can chip an aura would then maybe wax lyrical about what exactly they've experienced. Instead, this woman kept talking tosh at me, carefully gauging me. And I think when I saw that, I thought to me, it felt like an intel agent or police officer, an undercover police officer assessing a person. So you would just throw stuff at them and see where they would, you know, kind of pick up, if they would reject nonsense concepts, what their face would look like when they're obviously being, you know, talked nonsense at. So to me, it looked like that sort of police and intel type of calibration. Elke Malone did not come across like a victim because of that. So my first initial assessment of Elke was based on that, her claiming that, you know, someone chipped her aura. Yeah, fuck me. When my biggest problem is that I'm not chipped for real anymore, but somebody chipped my aura, that's the moment when I don't have any problems. Okay, so that sort of stuff. But now let me show you another type of evidence. Okay, because Elke Malone, she also tweeted at me, and I would like to show you the evidence. Okay, so I'm just bringing up the evidence about Elke Malone, because Elke, after this interaction, she contacted me on Twitter, okay? And I want to show you her Twitter profile. So imagine you leave the scanning at the Ikator scanning in Brussels, and then you're just on Twitter, but you had a really strange interaction with this woman. And I had this gut feeling at the time I didn't pitch her as intel. I actually pitched her as an undercover police officer, frankly. That was my assessment. But anyway, could be wrong, could be wrong, could be wrong. And who am I to tell the difference between undercover police officers and, you know, badly trained intel agents? So I'm not distinguishing that, you know, but I actually thought she was an agent or intelligence officer, whatever you want to call it, or undercover police officer. So that was my conclusion based on the interaction I've observed then. And then imagine, with this in mind, imagine somebody contacts you over Twitter like this. They contact you, send something to you, and then you don't know who they are because they're, you know, it's a little icon, and they address you as L, and then it's at hope 15492189. L at hope 15492189. When I see this these days, these ludicrously long numbers, I think, oh, that's an agent account, because these numbers are so easy to generate. You can generate usernames really quickly. You don't have to think about, oh, am I going to be called, you know, Dobby or Miss Muffinhead or I don't know what, you know, or Delightful Thunder. You just think of a word like hope, and then you annex it with a long number. So if I were GCHQ and I would be really shit at writing algorithms, I would start generating usernames exactly like this. Use a word picked from a dictionary and then use a number. Because numbers are ludicrously easy. They are very machine, what's it called? Like, not even computable, like operable. Okay? So when I see this sort of stuff, I'm sorry, I think GCHQ, I think Intel, I think like police using a GCHQ algorithm in a really shit way. I'm sorry, that's just me being biased. Then when I clicked on her, who she is following, and the first one that's flashed up is Interpol, and she's only following 28 people. What the hell do you think am I going to think after this? So strike number one, Elke in Brussels. She strikes me like an undercover police officer. Then I get addressed by her as L at hope 15492118. Then I go onto her profile. Actually, the third strike was I looked at this image and I was like, that's blurred. Who the fuck puts such a blurred image up of themselves unless they're severely short-sighted? They're literally blind. And Elke didn't strike me as somebody with particularly thick glasses or somebody particularly blind. And then imagine the fourth strike is you click on the following, the first thing you see is Interpol. Well, I was left to think that this woman actually works for the police service in Germany. That's what I concluded. But then what I wrote back to her is I said, Elke, don't use that profile image or people will think you are a BND agent. That's what I wrote on Twitter to Elke. And you know what happened? The profile got deleted immediately. She didn't reply. I clicked on this again some 10 minutes later, thinking, oh, Elke hasn't replied. I hope she didn't take it the wrong way. And I realized the account was deleted. It wasn't there anymore. In other words, the account got deleted so that my message to this account, one of the very first messages, because as you can tell, this account joined January 2017, and at the time of me screenshotting it, there were only 174 tweets. So imagine under your first 174 tweets, there is a tweet from somebody who's a campaigner against Intel saying, don't use that profile image or you will look like the BND. Like an agent for the BND. Now, a victim might think, oh, well, fuck this woman, and might block me. A normal victim wouldn't really delete the account. But this person deleted the account. And what that signaled to me is that this person didn't want to block me because they had to follow me. Okay? But they also didn't want this sentence on their profile where I just accused them of looking like a BND agent. Do you understand the logic? So when she deleted the account, that was the 5th strike. Okay. And then what I thought was really, really odd, again, is that later there was Andreas from Stockhausen, a guy who was a chapter in on himself. He put out a tweet and he said, please brief update on my fellow German comrade in arms requested. And he tweeted that at me. And the tweet, sorry, this is very small, you probably can't see. Okay, but it's kind of important what it says. So imagine you get a tweet from Andreas from Stockhausen, and he says to you, because he tweeted it at me, please brief update about fellow German comrade in arms. And he in the tweet, he says, anybody able to give an update on current status quo of Miss Melanie Vritschan? Where's the lady right now? Is Melanie quite all right? So I wrote back saying, Melanie isn't right at all. Her baby has still not been returned to her. We are continuing to fight the authorities behind the scenes, but Melanie is being blackmailed severely via having her baby held hostage by these psychopaths. That's what I wrote. And then immediately, Elke Malone replied. Here you can see L at hope 15492189, and that is the newly generated account, because the same username became available again as soon as she deleted the first account. So with this account that didn't have my message anymore, she wrote, what are they doing with her? Not clear if it's the baby or Melanie, okay? But the point is that Andreas von Stockhausen sent it to me, I replied to him, and then Elke immediately got in on the case. But Elke wasn't included in the original conversation. So I thought, oh, that means Elke is following both Andreas von Stockhausen and me, which is fair enough. But I just screenshotted her to show that she also changed her profile image, and the new profile image was slightly less weird, but again was overlit on her face so that people couldn't see her face. And for me, that was the 6th strike. Okay, I'm not sure if this is big enough. Let me really blow it up. This was Elke's image. You can see it's overlit here. And when you clicked on it, her face was actually quite hard to see. So I thought, what are the chances that one victim uploads an image of themselves, which is ludicrously blurred, and then uploads an image of themselves where the face is again overlit? And you can see that this photograph was taken in darkness, and hence the flash was flashing the image, the face, and that's how this overlit image came about. But is that really the only image of yourself that you have? Or would you rather pick this image if you are actually an undercover police agent and you don't really want your face banded around? But if you look at the definitions on my picture, you can recognize me. If you look at that image, you can't really recognize Elke, which is really funny, because in the previous image of herself, you also couldn't really recognize Elke Malone either. You really have to zoom out. But if you look at this page, these are the definitions of this image, and this is how blurred this image was compared to the background here. So, in other words, based on 6 strikes, really highly unusual strikes, I decided that Elke Malone is most likely an undercover police officer or an undercover intelligence officer. Okay? This is how it came about, right? Now, what happened then is the following. I heard from, actually another thing I have to say, because this is an actual sentence that went through my mind. When I left Brussels, in the long car journey from Brussels to Zurich, I was casting my mind back over all the different victims who I met. And I remember distinctly thinking to myself, this thing about chipping the aura from Elke was so freaking weird and was so much like an undercover police officer, the way she was probing me. I actually thought to myself, she is a really shit undercover police officer. A really shit one. She's going to blow the show, and then what's going to happen is they are going to withdraw her from the case. They're going to take her off the case and deploy her elsewhere. And I said to myself, before long, Elke will be deployed elsewhere. Okay? And this is pretty much the mental image I had in my mind. Okay? So this is what I said to myself. So imagine you leave Brussels thinking, oh yeah, this was an undercover police officer. Oh, she won't last long. You know, they are going to redeploy her. She's much better used somewhere else. You know, she can infiltrate neo-Nazi groups instead of infiltrating fucking Holocaust victims. Okay, so why the fuck does the police have to infiltrate us? They refuse to help us and then they infiltrate us. These were my thoughts. So I arrogantly said, oh no, she's so shit, they're gonna redeploy her somewhere else. And then at some point I hear from Melanie, oh, have you heard Elke Malone died? And I was like, really? My first thought was, oh, she got redeployed. I don't believe a word of that. And I said to Melanie, how the hell do you know she died? And she said, oh, you know, a victim email list sent it around. Well, I just published a video about what I think about victim email lists, right? The ones you can't unsubscribe from. And it's in my video, Psychological Warfare Operatives. So when I heard, oh yeah, victim email, you know, circular, passed this information out, it was over Facebook or something. I was like, okay, yeah, right, sure. You know, no evidence. We have, nobody misses these people. There are no frantic calls from family who maybe want to find out who this person was talking to before their death. Nothing. When these people disappear, there are no friends, no family, nobody asking questions. Nobody. And then I thought, oh yeah, that again kind of implies she was an agent. So what I actually thought, and this was my genuine opinion, and I shared it with Melanie. I said, you know what, frankly, I think Elke Malone was just a BND agent. And I said that, this was my opinion. But then I proceeded to explain to Melanie why I thought that. I explained about this comment chipping the aura, then staring at me to watch my reaction. I explained about the odd, you know, Twitter profile that wasn't really clearly visible. Okay, I explained about the Twitter handle with the ludicrously long number that I don't think any, you know, victim would remember unless it's their phone number or their bank number, which no victim would ever put on Twitter. And then, and so on and so on and so on. So everything I just explained to you, I explained to Melanie. Did it enter her head? No. Instead, it's like, oh yeah, and look, Elke Malone died, and for evil Catherine, she was just a BND agent. How heartless. But Melanie doesn't tell you all this stuff. Melanie doesn't tell you about, you know, infiltration of activist groups and advocacy groups, which is now a known fact. The spy cop scandal in the UK is a big thing. The spy cop scandal, spy cops, look that up, spy cops UK. It's a big scandal because police organizations don't help victims. They fucking infiltrate the groups that victims form to try to help themselves. Oh, gosh, on it goes. I really have to do a break here. It's just like, this is like, oh my God. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to stop here with Elke Malone, and there's many, many more people to come. And I need to upload all the evidence about all the other people where Melanie claims that it's outrageous that I consider them an agent. And the funny thing is, most of them have said themselves they're agents. So, but anyway, I am exhausted. So I'm going to call this a day. I'm going to make a mark of where I stop. And I'm going to have another broadcast where I'm going through all the others. So thank you for listening. And bye for now.